Chapter 703. He was completely unrecognizable. Not only did his hairstyle change, but his temperament and even his sacred mark also changed. After implanting the characteristics of hybrids through minimally invasive surgery, his hair was reshaped by the Abyss stylist with scissors. It became short hair, but the lengthened bangs highlighted a bit of gloominess and dullness. His naked back was painted with a brand new work by a hellish artist using a special paint. It was as if a hideous old monk was carrying a heavy bronze bell in a wriggling darkness in a dilapidated temple where a will-o'-the-wisp rose. But after looking at it for a long time, one could vaguely see the outline of a strange and cold door. Ingzhou's second level of genealogy, Nadera Square. The main characteristics are ghost fire, erosion and intimidation of the aura of death. It is one of the lower sacred marks of Rashomon. If you go further up, you will be Ibaraki Boy. Its characteristics and areas of expertise are exactly the same as yours. Remember not to expose yourself. AI Ching's finger swiped across the screen of her phone twice. The small horn that had been implanted into Huai Shi's skull trembled slightly. The mechanism within it activated on its own, suppressing Huai Shi's origin substance fluctuations to the level of a second-tier origin substance. Huai Shi thought for a moment and asked, "Shouldn't the wood demon be more suitable? The wood demon's combat power is too weak. Although it is harmless, it is not suitable for you to raise your status in a short time. Your purpose is to enter the underworld of the Dambwa inner circle and work hard to climb up. Recently, the underworld is very chaotic, and it is more convenient for you to make contributions. Anyway, the extreme Dao nowadays are a bunch of scumbags who deserve to die. You could do whatever you want." Huai Shi couldn't help but want to clap after hearing this. This wave of President AI was too detailed. Not only his background and the sacred mark, but also his promotion and salary and the way to reach the peak of extreme Dao. "Then is there anything else I need to do next?" he asked. "Before the mission begins, give yourself a name. It is an undercover mission anyway. I hope you don't mess around. If your name is too weird, you won't pass. Don't worry, I like this part the most." Huai Shi took the form and beamed with joy. She pondered for a moment before writing the last stroke on the brand new resume with a flourish of her pen. "A plain person?" AI Ching frowned. She sensed that something was wrong. "Where have I seen it before? Yeah, I think I've heard of it somewhere before. I just took it and changed it. Hopefully, I won't offend anyone." Huai Shi nodded seriously, not worried at all about exposing himself. The moment the miraculous carving was completed, the shrinking of the phenomenon had already ended. The records on the white paper began to thin rapidly until only an outline was left. Even the participants would only remember that there was such a thing and such a person. However, most of the things would be diluted and eliminated. There was no need to worry about the possibility of being exposed. To put it simply, his dark history of cross-dressing had been erased. Unless some super large organization had nothing better to do and invested a lot of manpower and resources to search for everything on the paper, it would be possible to piece together some information by tracing the type of miracle engraving. But what does this have to do with me? Why sure? Since the meal had already been prepared, why would he still need to worry about the problem of losing his horse? After another 30 minutes, all the details were arranged, and the fresh and hot mixed-race youth, strongman Huai Shi, was born. According to the information, Matsumoto Ozeki, who was his master, had cooperated with the Central Bureau decades ago, and Tanaka, who introduced him to the industry, was a secret informant of the Central Bureau. Otherwise, how could he have lived until he retired? Even if it didn't interfere in the internal affairs of the modern realm. As a huge organization that maintained the operation of the modern realm, the influence of the Astronomical Association was still pervasive and omnipresent. When a power passed through layers of approval and was limited to use, the influence was still huge and far-reaching. Just like now, a person called Huai Shi had appeared out of thin air in the modern realm. From the delivery records to the elementary school classmates to the same year in the dojo, everything was prepared. The whole process didn't even take 5 minutes. More than 26 minutes were spent waiting for approval and approval. By the time Huai Shi bought the beginner's sumo book in the subway. He had already changed from a teacher in the ivory tower to a mixed-race youth who was in urgent need of money and had no other choice but to turn to the extreme path. Now, what he was most concerned about was another matter. If we can't do it, what will happen in the end? This was the last question Huaisher asked before leaving. If I mess up and don't succeed in the end, will the Astronomical Association take further measures? Out of a sense of identification with the Astronomical Association, Huaisher was very respectful and didn't say anything that everyone understood. But AI Ching still understood what he wanted to ask. There's no need to worry about the Astronomical Association cleaning up the inner circle of Donghua. The black letter also has a limit. Huaisher, the Central Bureau, isn't crazy enough to kill all the beast characteristics because of an uncontrollable biological law. AI Ching said, but that's not necessarily the case in other places. It's not the Astronomical Association that's anxious that these mixed-race people don't die early enough. This is the internal problem of this country. Do you understand? In accordance with the first act of the P5 and the Astronomical Association, the Astronomical Association can't interfere in the internal affairs of any sovereign country in the modern realm, especially when there are still two sovereigns in this country. She rubbed her forehead with a headache and sighed gloomily. We have to solve this matter before they make a move, in case their general or emperor accidentally remembers that there's a group of mixed-race people under their feet. What? They still want to riot? Great, let's go slaughter them. This was what Miyamoto Genichiro was most afraid of. He wasn't afraid of the Astronomical Association. The Astronomical Association cared about their reputation, or rather, they had to care about their reputation. Otherwise, once they were degraded or stained with some heinous stain, they would lose their noble position. This was the foundation of the existence of this organization. No matter how big the matter was, they would definitely solve it with iron heads. But other people were different. Other people wouldn't care. Compared to many powerful forces, the power of mixed-race people was too small. Even if they rioted, there was absolutely no possibility of success. Even Green Sun should be aware of this, and they were just using them as cannon fodder to achieve their goal. After a carnival, all of them were smashed to pieces. A general success was built on the bones of thousands of people, and only a few of them were successful. Those people, Huaisher wanted to say something, but stopped. Those with beast characteristics, why would they be so stupid? AI Ching sneered and said what Huaisher wanted to say. Why would they be willing to be used by others? Don't think too much, Huaisher. They're just not smart enough. She said, if people can't let go of hatred, they can't learn to think. If they can't take revenge, they can't get justice. Thinking and fairness, they have neither of these. Why should they be rational? She lowered her head and flipped through the file in her hand. Looking at the summarized information on it, she said indifferently, some people really think that this will be the solution, and some people are very clear-headed. It's just that they have nothing, so they want others to be like them. At this time, the really smart people should fish in troubled waters and gain the greatest benefits for themselves. Guess how happy the Seven Stars Group is now? The smugglers of the Russian Federation have recently opened up all the routes, transporting day and night. Whose orders are they to satisfy? How many other illegal sects are eager to participate in this carnival? AI Ching raised her hand and made an explosion gesture. Everyone is waiting. As long as they can vent, everyone will have a bright future. Boom! A reckless explosion burst out. The terrifying flames spread and engulfed Huaisher. He finally woke up from his dream and looked at the unfamiliar ceiling in front of him with sweat dripping down his back. Mold spread between the pornographic posters left by the previous resident. Huaisher Jean, wake up. When he turned his head, he saw half of a face sticking out from under the bed, staring at him. It urged him unhappily. Mr. Fujimoto is looking for you. Hurry up, don't let Big Brother wait too long. Green Sun's reply finally came. Huaisher's spirit was lifted. He hurriedly got up and followed the person to Fujimoto commercial without washing his face. Passing through the narrow alley, there were messy scenes on both sides. Under the faint light of the red light, he could see a few women smoking behind the window and waving at him. The dim light could not hide the spots at the corners of their eyes. Their empty pupils were stained with pink, and nothing could be seen. His footsteps paused involuntarily, but he was pushed by the person behind him. "Okay, you're still thinking about women at this time. When you're rich, you can find as beautiful as you want. Hurry up, don't let the customers wait." The messenger impatiently urged him to continue moving forward. In a quick glance, he seemed to see a back figure holding a photo and talking to a prostitute. The woman impatiently urged him to go somewhere else and not hinder her business. But he must have seen that back figure somewhere. It was like déjà vu. But it was definitely not an important role, because Huaisher had no impression of it at all. This strange illusion was quickly thrown to the back of his mind. He arrived at the place. Strangely, it was not Fujimoto Commercial's office, but the back alley downstairs. It was an extended van with an advertisement for Fujimoto photography and a picture of a big-breasted young lady on it. Fujimoto poked his head out from the driver's seat and smiled. "Huaishiki-kun, you're finally here. Have you eaten dinner?" "Not yet." Huaisher shook his head. "To be honest, I'm starving. Are we going out? Can you let me have a meal first? There'll be time for you to eat on the way. Get in the car first." Fujimoto raised his hand and pointed to the car behind him. "Someone is waiting for you. You'd better hurry up." Huaisher turned his head and sensed the fierce aura in the car. There were two ascendants inside. He could vaguely feel the hostility. Through the window, covered with sunscreen, he could not see the specific information in the car with his eyesight. But even if he thought with his feet, he knew that someone who could make Fujimoto, the boss of Extreme Tao, be the driver was definitely not an ordinary person. The biggest possibility was Green Sunday. In other words, the people of Green Sun had finally arrived. Glancing at the signal unimpeded sign on his retina, Huaisher was suddenly fearless. He could call for justice and fire at any time. If worse came to worst, he could just kill this group of people after messing up. As long as the insiders were dead, no one would know that he had infiltrated. With this kind of confidence, he opened the car door and got into the darkness. Then, he was greeted with a cold question. "Name?" Chapter 704. "You're here again, aren't you?" Full of expectations, he walked into the carriage, hoping to have a battle of wits and courage with the people of Green Sun. But he was greeted with a name. Huaisher didn't feel good. In the dim carriage, without turning on the lights, the two messengers of Green Sun seemed to be shrouded in a thick fog, and their faces were covered by wisps of darkness. He couldn't hear any specific characteristics from the voice, only a dull tone that couldn't be distinguished between a man and a woman. Behind the black fog, two pairs of cold eyes stared at the mixed-race boy. Since the moment he entered the carriage, an invisible force unfolded and enveloped him. "Name?" the person in the lead repeated. Huaisher froze for a moment, looked at them blankly, and quickly answered, "Kishimoto." "Age?" 18. "Birthplace?" "Yoshimiraisaka." "The border, that Renshin hospital." To his surprise, every word that came out of his mouth would appear with the turbulence of the air, turning into a fist-sized metal entity suspended in the air. Between the two sides, the questions and answers were slowly arranged, like a chat box that constantly grew and turned. "Who is your father?" "Kishimoto." "What about your mother?" "Watanabe Puruko." Next to him, the thinner messenger turned a strange metal ballpoint pen in his hand and suddenly interrupted to ask an unrelated question. "Are you a virgin?" Huaisher was at a loss, froze in place, and looked at the two people puzzled. But the two people didn't respond, just stared straight at him, waiting for his answer, and then asked again, "Kishimoto, are you a virgin?" "I'm not." Huaisher's expression twitched, but then he saw that the kanji and kanji that came out from the corner of his mouth suddenly vibrated in the air and turned blood red. "Lies." Huaisher looked at the metal ballpoint pen in the messenger's hand and instantly understood that it was a relic of the border specially used for lie detection. Unfortunately, this set of fake identities was useless against the Astronomy Association. In fact, there were only 3 principles in the so-called lie detection. The simplest and most straightforward method was to conduct a mental analysis and verification on the person being tested. Through the other party's mental state, one would be able to determine whether or not the other party was lying. However, its weakness was that it could be easily countered by techniques such as hypnosis. The second type was more common. This kind of border relic would be connected to some strange places and indescribable, mysterious existences. Usually, they were some souls born from the hell projection of the Silver Sea or some kind of wonderful item. They could directly search the records and verify their authenticity. However, this kind of retrieval tool was often limited by the user. It was helpless against many problems that could not be verified or were beyond the user's scope. The third type was divination. Depending on one's own level and authority, and whether the consumption was large or small, the answer was often ambiguous and unreliable. However, the upper limit of this type of item was usually the highest. As long as one's level was high enough and was willing to invest a large amount of resources into it, they would be willing to pay the price. Then, he would definitely be able to get the answer closest to the truth. Unfortunately, these three methods were useless against the current Huaishur. The horn on his skull directly integrated the interference and deception of the first type of lie detection tool, perfectly ensuring that Huaishur's identity as the paperman would not be exposed. As for the second type of retrieval, no matter how awesome it was, it could only retrieve the data of the present. Everyone knew that things like searchers were very unreliable. No matter what keywords you entered, the Bureau could throw the advertisement to the first column on the first page. And when it came to the third type, the Book of Destiny was simply too happy. As long as Huaishur was willing, he could even make the person who divined him believe that he was an alpaca running carefree on the African savanna, spitting saliva. But it shouldn't be just that. No matter how careless he was, he shouldn't have placed the lie detection tool so blatantly in the open. In other words, did he have other tricks up his sleeve? However, the other party clearly didn't give him any time to think. The two of them took turns to ask questions at lightning speed, asking about almost all the big and small things of the paperman's childhood. From the beginning to the end, the two of them stared straight at Huaishur. This made him feel increasingly uneasy, and he didn't know what kind of situation he had stepped into. In the communication channel, AI Ching had already told him to be prepared to take action at any time. No one knew what kind of danger was hidden behind the smooth sailing situation, until the half an hour of questioning gradually came to an end. The two emissaries didn't ask any more questions. Only Huaishur asked with an uneasy expression, "My lords, did I pass?" Secretly, under the thin shell, the muscles had already begun to move imperceptibly, contracting and relaxing like a bow that was gradually gathering strength, ready to launch a thunderous attack at any time. There were a total of two enemies, one on the left and one on the right, with a distance of 1 meter. At this distance, Huaishur could instantly burst into a round of fierce attacks. If the other party had a defensive tool, he could use steps at the same time to forcibly overturn the moving vehicle. The moment he lost gravity, he could use the axe of wrath or the hammer of pain to break the defense, and then use the attributes of the other party's stigmata to choose a weapon to restrain them. In an instant, almost instinctively, countless battle plans flowed through Huaishur's mind. But at that moment, the two emissaries nodded in satisfaction. The leader seemed to be very pleased and said, "Paperman, you didn't lie on many key issues. You have passed the assessment, and Green Sun is open to you. However, before you officially become a member of Green Sun, there are a few last questions that you need to answer." The other thin emissary raised the border relic in the shape of a ballpoint pen in his hand, and then pressed the pen cap. With a click, a crisp sound spread out. At that moment, Huaishur found that he had lost control of his own body. Right in front of him, the words formed by the conversation between the two sides began to rapidly change, overlapping and combining. In the end, it actually formed the appearance and outline of the paperman. Attached to Huaishur's body, this piece of information from him actually formed a virtual soul, dominating his body. All the questions and answers had been to construct this virtual soul that replaced Huaishur's own body, constantly extracting origin substance. The metal ballpoint pen simulated the information of the paperman, turning it into its own puppet. if Huaisher really was the paperman. For the current him, this was just a layer of shackles. As long as he got rid of the paperman disguise, he could immediately attack. And at that moment, he heard AI Ching's urgent voice, "Don't move." All resistance disappeared without a trace. Huaisher gave up on resisting, allowing the paperman's virtual soul to take control of his body. "I'm very sorry for asking so many rude questions just now. Please don't worry. We won't do anything to you. We just hope that you can answer a few questions truthfully from the bottom of your heart." The emissary, who was twirling the metal ballpoint pen in his hand, spoke. After unblocking the barrier, he used a polite and gentle tone to apologize to Huaisher. But where had he heard this voice before? First question. The emissary tapped the ballpoint pen in his hand and asked, "Do you hate mixed-race people?" An invisible force dominated Huaisher's lips, tongue, and lungs, forcing him to say the answer from the bottom of his heart. "No." "Very good." The emissary's gaze seemed to soften slightly, and then he asked again, "Have you ever been discriminated against because of your identity, or even treated unfairly?" "Yes, that's right." Huaisher answered truthfully. Whether it was the paperman or Huaisher, they had all experienced pain, indifference, and even malice. Third, the twirling ballpoint pen paused for a moment. In the silence, the emissary suddenly asked, "Have you ever thought of taking revenge on this world because of this, killing all those who persecuted you, and making those who despise you pay the price?" In the silence, Huaisher gritted his teeth, trying to cater to the other party's wishes, but no matter what, he couldn't lie. In the end, he sighed tiredly. "No," he said, "that kind of thought I have never had." In an instant, silence fell. The two emissaries from Green Sun looked at each other in shock, as if it was the first time they heard such a strange answer. They couldn't believe it. But immediately, the way they looked at Huaisher became subtle. Blocked by the thick fog, they couldn't see clearly, but there was no doubt that the other party's expression became serious and serious. "It's over." Huaisher closed his eyes, sighed, and prepared to take action. But soon, he heard the thin emissary raise his hand and applaud with admiration and praise. "Don't feel inferior and uneasy because of this, Mr. Paperman. Such a righteous and kind character. You should feel proud," the emissary solemnly said. "Even an unjust person like me whose hands are stained with blood must express admiration for such a noble will. Pure gentleman. Only someone who knows how to restrain hatred will know how to love their own people. Only someone who knows how to pity will understand the weight of suffering. I believe that the Grand Commander will also be happy because of your arrival." "What the hell?" Huaisher raised his eyes in shock and looked at the other side. Sensing the joy from the other party's heart, he was even more confused. How could a sociopathic organization like Green Sun welcome a kind person like me? Shouldn't the more violent, evil, and sociopathic the better? Then, one last question. The emissary with the ballpoint pen raised his hand, not hiding his origin form at all. He continuously poured power into the border relics, allowing the pure man Huaisher's virtual persona to gain more and more control over Huaisher. He racked his brains, not allowing any lies or evasions, and asked the final question. "Now that you have come to Green Sun, what is the thing you want to do the most?" Chapter 705. Now that you've come to Green Sun, what do you want to do the most? When a messenger asked this question, everyone on the other end of the communication channel was horrified and alert. Their hearts sank to the bottom, and they subconsciously activated the plan for a surprise attack and prepared to issue the order to attack. By the time Huaisher reacted, it was already too late, because he had already said the answer hidden in the deepest part of his heart. "Of course, it's to make money." Huaisher stared and replied with a trembling voice. "How good is it to be a gang? You don't have to feel guilty at all when you do evil. Not only can you improve your economic situation, but you can also hide from others and save a lot of money. I say, is Green Sun very rich? Can't you give me more? I'm about to die of poverty. To be honest, if this continues, I'll have to sell myself." Messenger, AI Ching, Huaisher, who finally reacted, dead silence. An awkward silence. Not only Green Sun sitting across from him, even the command team on the other end of the communication channel didn't expect such a strange answer. Only AI Ching, who had long been mentally prepared, picked up the warm water next to her and took the medicine before her stomach hurt. Facing the complicated expressions of her colleagues and subordinates, she waved her hand casually. Everyone sat down. This was a routine operation. You see, I already said that he's fine. In a long silence, the expressions of the two Green Sun messengers also became quite interesting. A mixed-race teenager who had been discriminated against since childhood didn't choose to retaliate against society or become the person he hated the most after gaining great power. He joined Green Sun because it was more convenient to do evil and there was no moral burden. He didn't have any sense of identity with your program of resisting the astronomical society and the tyranny of the current situation, and he didn't want to rely on you to reach the peak or the bottom of his life. It was purely because he wanted to earn money. Such a simple reason was so convincing that the two messengers were completely speechless and didn't even know how to respond. In the silence, only the squeaking of the ballpoint pen could be heard. Time was over. The virtual personality of the paper doll in his arms was broken. But once certain things were revealed, no one could go back. The only thing left was the thick awkwardness when the two sides looked at each other. To make money. The thin emissary coughed twice and said, "Earning money is also a good thing. Relying on one's own ability to make a living, cough, cough, is not shameful." Yes, that's right. The other solemn emissary could only nod in agreement. Then, does that mean I've passed? Huaisher asked with a flattering smile. They were afraid that the other party would suddenly turn hostile and rebuke them. We are all resistance fighters with aspirations and ideals. We don't want a butcher like you who stinks of money. Ahem, although this life ideal is a bit strange, it's still considered a pass. The thin messenger shrugged, put away his ballpoint pen, and took the lead to break the silence. He extended his hand and said, "Congratulations, Mr. White Paper. From today onwards, you're a member of Green Sunday." Okay. Huaisher was pleasantly surprised and reached out to hold his hand and shook it twice. But the more he pinched, the more he felt that this grandson's hand was not quite right. It was as if he had pinched it somewhere before. "However, I have a task for you." The thin emissary forcefully pulled his hand back and looked at the person beside him. The solemn subordinate took out a pistol from his pocket and handed it to him. There was also a photo. In the photo, there was a thin middle-aged man wearing branded sportswear. He looked like a skeleton. His blonde hair was mixed with some linen gray, but his eyes were shockingly green. His eye sockets were deep, and his gaze was frighteningly sharp. He looked like an owl. "Who is this?" "Your goal tonight." The emissary said, "Don't you want to make money? Kill this person and you'll have money." Kill. Huaisher did not quite understand the meaning of this Ingzhou pronoun. The emissary raised his hand and made a gesture to his neck. Huaisher shrank his neck and sucked in a breath of cold air. "There's no need to be so cruel, right? Are you afraid?" The emissary chuckled softly. "Don't worry, this guy is definitely the kind who deserves to die. There's no need to feel any burden in your heart." "No, what I mean is, do you have to cut his neck?" Huaisher asked in confusion and made the gesture of cutting his neck again. "Do you want to bring back the head? It's not good to see blood. It should be better to put in a box, right?" The emissary rolled his eyes. "Anyway, just kill that guy from the Russian Federation. Why are you asking so many questions?" "Okay." The moment Huaisher nodded, the car stopped. Through the sunscreen film on the glass, he could see the lights of Kyoto in the gradually rising twilight and the huge neon sign next to it. "Aisha House. We're here." The emissary pointed in the direction of the car door, indicating that he should get out of the car. Huaisher was completely stunned. "We're starting work now? Speed is the most important thing in war, Mr. Huaisher." The emissary said, "You can treat this as an assessment. Your treatment in Green Sun will depend on the results of this mission." Huaisher looked at the noisy nightclub outside the window in shock. He turned around and looked at the two emissaries. He began to think about a question. When he got in the car just now, didn't they say that food would be provided on the way? He trembled with anger. "You Green Sun people don't even allow people to be full ghosts. If his avatar was still Mr. Huaishur, he would simply want to punch someone. How do we, the traitor, live to satisfy you? Oh, I'm a traitor, then's fine. Since I'm already here, and I'm still young, it's not easy for everyone. Huaishur coughed and asked, well, have you all eaten? 15 minutes later, in a convenience store on 2 streets, after sweeping up all the Odin, Huaishur wiped his mouth in satisfaction. He raised his head and smiled at Fujimoto, whose wallet was dry and had a complicated expression. I'm sorry, our strongman ate a lot and consumed a lot of energy. It's okay, it's okay. Fujimoto squeezed out a smile with difficulty. Young people are still developing. Eat more. That's so embarrassing. It's okay, it's okay. It's what I should do. Since you said so, Huaishur turned around and raised his hand to the shop assistant. Please heat up 5 more drumsticks for me. 2 cans of beer, thank you. In the world, other than drawing cards for free, was there anything happier than sponsored partnerships? Nothing. Huaishur couldn't help but want to praise Green Sunday. If this were to be written in a book, it might even become a moving story. A wandering mixed-race strongman came to the local rich farmer Green Sun's house and asked for a meal. Green Sun entertained him attentively. That night, the mixed-race strongman killed his whole family. After almost all the quick-heat food in the convenience store was finished, Huaishur finally patted his stomach and sighed. Thank you for your hospitality. It's good that you're full. It's good that you're full. Fujimoto's expression twitched. He squeezed out a smile and looked at him. Since you're full, then should we, but I'm still a little hungry. Huaishur got up with a rueful expression and rubbed his stomach. After taking 2 steps, he suddenly turned around and asked, why don't we go to another place and continue the business? Fujimoto felt like he was going crazy. He wanted to punch him. He'd rather not eat and get to work. Okay, why are you so fierce? Huaishur sighed and shrugged. He wanted to point to the van outside and tell him to talk to Green Sunday. After taking 2 steps outside, he patted his head again and turned around to ask, by the way, Brother Fujimoto, have you heard of chivalry? Never heard of it. I don't want to hear it. Shut up. Fujimoto was furious. Get the hell out of here and get to work. Huaishur shrugged and pushed the door out. He walked straight to the nightclub called Aisha's house. While he was delaying, Ai Ching had already investigated the situation of his next opponent. Sergeyevich Mikolov Selenko. Ai Ching looked down at the information in her hands and told him, Russian-English mixed blood, 42 years old, nicknamed Old Hyena. He's one of the largest smugglers in the capital. He secretly runs a snakehead business and sells slaves. His specialty is that he can often get a lot of mixed products. You know what I mean, right? A lot of scum like that. Then doesn't that mean that I'm representing Green Sun today? Huaishur replied through the Origin Form communication device. He walked step by step into the neon lights and looked at the luxurious door. Behind the door, he could faintly hear the sound of rock and roll. Handsome men and beautiful women constantly lined up to enter and exit. It was obvious that business was booming. In front of the door, a few burly Russian Federation guards coldly scanned anyone who approached. Huaishur hadn't even lined up when he was stopped. The guards' eyes were sharp. They had already seen that Huaishur, who didn't have any branded clothes on him, was not their customer. After coming to Yingzhou, it seemed that even the burly Russian Federation people had become polite. They didn't push and shove violently. They just waved their hands to stop him. Sir, we have a membership system here. We don't welcome unrelated people. They didn't angrily rebuke Huaishur in case he was some kind of rich person who liked to cosplay and came here to fish. It was said that this kind of thing was quite common. Rich people were all perverts. Huaishur was also stunned. They didn't make a move immediately. He actually didn't know what to do next. Directly making a move wasn't too good, right? After all, they were quite polite. They were all working people, so why make things difficult for them? The paper effigy in the arms of the newbie Yakuza fell into a daze. This was the first time in his life that he had caused trouble. How could he act like he did it often? Waiting online, it was quite urgent. Under the guards' increasingly serious and cold gazes, Huaishur thought for a moment and analyzed rationally. In the end, he nodded, said, "Oh," and turned around to leave. In the carriage not far away, a few people who were monitoring this place felt that 100,000 question marks had popped up in their minds. What the F***ck are you doing? Are you going to borrow the toilet? After turning around and walking a few steps, Huaisher realized that something was wrong. He quickly stopped, turned around, and walked over again. However, this time, the guards' expressions weren't so good. They became serious and indifferent, with hostility. As I said, we have a membership system here, sir. The burly guard reached out and pressed the stun baton on his waist. Unrelated people are not welcome. Well, Huaisher reached out, patted his head, and said seriously, "Are you recruiting people here?" Under the light of the neon lights, he lifted the bangs on his forehead, revealing a handsome face and a shy smile. He blinded the guard's dog eyes. He could always be a coward. Chapter 706. Just like that, he sneaked in. When he walked through the back door of Aisha's house, even Huaisher himself couldn't believe it, not to mention the two green sun messengers who were peeping in the car at the corner of the street in the distance. They looked at each other. If it weren't for the fact that the listening device placed on Huaisher's body was still running, indicating that he was going deeper into the nightclub step by step, they would almost suspect that this guy just found an excuse and ran away. What should we do? The burly subordinate turned around in amazement and looked at the real leader, the messenger who was frantically spinning the pen in his hand, asking for advice. According to the original plan, this job should have been given to them, but they were temporarily thrown here as a proof of allegiance to the newcomer. After killing that Russian Federation guy, from then on, he could only be at odds with the other extreme Dao masters outside the 5 factions. It was natural for the difficulty to exceed the standard, and the two were already prepared to help at any time. But they didn't expect that Huaisher would suddenly go in alone to apply for a job without saying a word. What the hell are they going to do? Could it be that he saw that the other side was powerful and influential, and then became a traitor as soon as he joined Green Sun? If it weren't for the fact that they couldn't hear any signs of betrayal from Huaisher, the two messengers would have immediately launched a one-stop service of exterminating the traitor. So, now, should they provide support? In the leader's hand, the metal ballpoint pen kept spinning, but it suddenly stopped between his 5 fingers. "Wait," he said, "let's see the situation first." There was still a steady stream of sound coming from the listening device. When the noisy rock and electronic music were blocked by the thick door, Huaisher was already taken to the back. In the corridor, all kinds of young ladies wearing very little clothes didn't care about their graceful bodies being exposed at all. They walked through the corridor with incomparable generosity. Occasionally, when they saw Huaisher, they would smile at him, and the security guard next to him reach out and touch the little brother's chin and butt and ask where this little fresh meat came from. In the face of sexual harassment before he even entered the job, Huaisher habitually wanted to cry. But when he thought of his mission, he could only pretend to be an innocent young man and let these old women, who were not as beautiful as him, tease him. The benefits of the bangs appeared at this time. It shielded him from prying eyes and allowed him to see all the security details. There were 4 floors in the building. The first floor was the basement, and it was heavily guarded. No one knew what was going on. The first and second floors were mostly occupied by the noisy stage and booths of nightclubs. The third floor was also sealed off, and there was only one dedicated elevator. As he passed by a door, he heard a familiar clicking sound mixed with Russian laughter. It was the sound of steel grinding against steel. Gun. The waiter who passed by had a strange smell on him. A few grains of white powder could be faintly seen outside the exquisitely decorated box on the plate in his hand. Huaisher's footsteps paused for a moment, and he hurriedly glanced at him. Under the dim light, he could distinguish a few needle marks on the tattoo on the back of his neck and wrist. He was not the only one. Except for the security guards outside, most of the people here had needle holes and injection marks on their bodies, especially the young women who had just come out of the locker room. More or less, there were traces of beastification on their bodies. Their graceful bodies were decorated with small blood spots. Their eyes were blurred, their faces were red, and they were excited abnormally. Huaisher couldn't help but look over, but he was pushed by the guard behind him. "Don't look around." Okay. The paper doll in his arms shrunk her neck and smiled at him fawningly. Behind the closed locker room door, there were cries and angry voices. Something was smashed on the ground and broke. Soon, the cries could not be heard, because they had already gone far. To be honest, this is the first time I've done this kind of thing. Fleischer lowered his head and sighed softly. The guard glanced back at him and said coldly, "Don't worry, you'll get used to it soon." Fleischer asked, "What if I can't get used to it?" The guard ignored him. Obviously, he didn't like a guy like him who could make a living with a good face. Fleischer lowered his eyes and didn't say anything. He just took a deep breath. What's the use of waiving the bill? Do the customers who come here care about that little bit of money? Don't send goods that haven't been taught well over there again. In the crowded backstage, Fleischer finally saw the busy manager. The female manager angrily scolded the assistant beside her and slapped her twice. "Send a bottle of baijiu to Mr. Chition on the second floor. Later, I'll take the new woman to apologize in person." She then said, "Mr. Chition on the second floor, give him a bottle of baijiu. What are you waiting for? Hurry up." After sending the assistant away, the cold female manager looked over with a stern and harsh gaze. But no matter how stern and harsh her gaze was, she couldn't help but be surprised when she saw this face. She reached out and pinched the chin of the paper doll in her arms. She raised her hand and pulled up her bangs. She looked down at the evasive eyes in disbelief. "This is really a pleasant surprise. You've done well this time. We just posted the recruitment this morning, and such a good seedling came to our door. What's her name? Why paper doll? Don't be nervous, serene." The manager stared at his face and guessed how much money this face could cheat from the group of brainless female guests. She was so excited that she was about to drool. "Do you have any talent? Does magic count?" The paper doll in her arms avoided her burning gaze and asked uneasily. The manager smiled dotingly, which was rare. She couldn't help but reach out and scratch the cute little face. "Magic? Magic is good. I know magic too." But Fleischer was distracted. He looked at the corner of the backstage and saw the woman who was dragged into the room by her hair while crying until the door was closed. "Serene, what kind of magic do you know?" The manager had already come over and asked, "Can you show me?" Okay. Fleischer forced himself to stay calm and squeezed out a smile. "Look, like all the street magic shows before the start of the performance." He showed his hands and 10 fingers. There was nothing hidden. Then he slowly closed his hands, intertwined his fingers, raised them, and put them in front of her. "Next, it's time to witness the miracle," Fleischer told her seriously. But then he didn't open his fingers, nor did he make something out of nothing. Instead, he pushed his clenched fist forward. Bang! The whole noisy backstage instantly burst out a roar that surpassed all the noise and spread. It was as if a small bomb had been detonated at this moment. The terrifying firepower was placed on his clenched fists. With Fleischer's action, the power converged into a line and burst forward. The heavenly drums sounded, and thunder suddenly appeared. Triple drummer, thunderbolt. The cone-shaped blood mist, and countless sticky rain burst out. In an instant, more than half of the backstage was dyed scarlet. The broken tissues stuck to the crystal lamp on the ceiling, and the whole backstage was dyed in dreamy pink. Dead silence came suddenly. A headless body fell on its back and fell to the floor with an exceptionally dull sound. And the magic show of the paper doll came to an end. He looked around and asked for the opinions of the surrounding audience. Such a big head disappeared in the blink of an eye. Wasn't it amazing? Shouts of admiration and excited screams followed, offering cheers for this magic show. The enthusiastic audience fled in all directions, afraid that the deadly magician would make an encore return. "Sorry, I didn't want to do it so early." Fleischer turned back and shrugged at the dull guard. "But you see, I couldn't hold back and didn't even get your boss's location." Before he could react, Fleischer reached out and pulled out the pistol from his holster, flipped the safety, aimed at his knee, and pulled the trigger. Then he shot the other knee. Finally, after thinking about it, he shot the guard in the head again. With a loud bang, the only audience left in the backstage was the manager lying on the ground. But the manager didn't speak and didn't want to give a good review. He didn't know why. Huaishir could only put his hands together and pray devoutly for the manager on the ground. I hope she's okay, but there's nothing I can do about it. In the sound of hurried footsteps in the distance, Huaishir stretched his neck and spread his hands to the manager on the ground, indicating that he couldn't help. Then, he turned and walked to the front desk. Opening the curtain, Huaishir was bathed in the explosive drumbeat and melody, and he couldn't help but shake his head. On the dimly lit dance floor, colorful laser lights crisscrossed and swept across. Under the high-pitched electronic music, countless guests followed along on the dance floor. The hot dancers on the steel pipes swayed their bodies and became part of the hustle and bustle. The air was dense with the smell of burning tobacco and alcohol. The white bodies undulated and danced in the darkness, and under the flickering light, they became dreamy and misty. The extravagant nightlife had just begun. However, if he was only satisfied with this level of catharsis, wouldn't it be a bit too boring? He wanted to add fuel to the fire of this dull nightlife. Passing through this short corridor, Huaishir raised his hand and tied his short hair behind his head, revealing sharp horns and slender eyes. He smiled at all the people who looked at him. The originally sloppy and autistic man had disappeared without a trace. Instead, it was replaced by an indescribable attraction, like a searchlight, radiating in all directions. Under the flickering light, the handsome face was like an evil spirit, revealing an unprecedented, dangerous aura from his smile. In this way, he swaggered forward, pushed away the staff who came up to inquire, went straight to the tuning console, and squeezed between the two DJs who cooperated seamlessly. Smiling, he raised his hand and put it on the shoulders of the two DJs. "Sorry, I'm ready to go to work." He intimately whispered to the two DJs, "Please give me your seats." This was the last sound the two DJs heard in the noisy music. The next moment, their vision turned black, and they couldn't help but collapse and roll under the console, leaving the heavy headphones spinning in Huaishir's hand. When the rhythm of the discs stopped abruptly, the guests who were immersed in the rhythm raised their eyes and then saw a smiling face under the flickering light. Chapter 707. Yeah. Hello, everybody. Huaishir opened his arms and announced to the guests without any stage fright. In the midst of the sharp electronic sound, the low voice echoed between the laser beams. "The boring nursery rhyme time is over, everyone." On the mixer, the man who dominated the entire club raised his arm and grinned. "Next is the time to truly step into the dangerous territory. I know that all of you yearn for more excitement, more power, and more violence. That's right, I know all of it. Are there any children who don't want to leave without drinking the juice? Are there any cowards who want to escape? Are there any people who don't want to welcome this wonderful and violent night?" Leaving the confused band aside, Huaishir raised her hand and announced to the excited guests in the low electric current sound, "You're welcome to join us. You're welcome. The theme is extreme. The theme is war. The theme is death and blood. Timetarok, burn the soul of Yakuza." In the eyes full of curiosity and expectation, Huaishir grinned, raised the two pistols in his hands, aimed at the ceiling, and pulled the trigger again and again. In the roar of gunfire, he cheered, "Next, our staff will personally present a performance for everyone. Welcome to the night of crime." An instant of silence arrived. When the screams and roars from backstage spread, all the stunned eyes were lit up by the flames of surprise. Whether it was the hoarse voice full of mystery or the handsome and dangerous ferocious atmosphere, this infectious power spread with the words and the restless melody, instantly igniting the enthusiasm of all the guests. Surprised cheers sounded from the audience. Countless hands were raised, dancing with Huaishir's two pistols, offering excited shouts for this dangerous game. Only the dancers and waiters looked around hesitantly. They did not understand what had happened, but when the gunshots rang out, they felt the fear that came from the bottom of their hearts. No, this is not a performance at all, but boom! Amidst the loud noise, a guard finally rushed to the front from the backstage. But when he saw the radiant figure under the laser light, He couldn't help but fall into an instant of shock. Then, the order from his supervisor overwhelmed everything else. He instinctively pulled out his stun baton and rushed to the stage, roaring and launching an attack. At that moment, under the crazy flashing lights, he caught a glimpse of a chilling smile. That was the last thing he saw, because the prelude to the performance had finally begun. Huaisha raised his hand. He pinched his face and violently lifted him off the ground. Then he punched him with all his might. In an instant, the guard's body bent into an unimaginable arc. The expensive microphone and sound receiver transmitted the crisp sound of broken bones to everyone's ears. Then his arms, legs, and finally his head. Under the cruel ravages and heavy blows, along with the drum beats, it became one of the rhythms of the electronic music. A high-pitched voice boomed from the huge sound system. Huaisha reached out and pulled out the stun baton from the guard's hand. He waved it like a light stick and walked towards his opponent step by step. I'm gonna fight him off. A Seven-Nation army called fold me back. I'm gonna beat them back. Even a Seven-Nation army can't stop me. Now, the man that the seven armies couldn't defeat was right in front of them, smiling at them. Let's begin, Huaisha said. This was the beginning of the tragic night of crime. There had never been such a bizarre battle and slaughter. The intruder and the guard fought together. It was a one-sided slaughter. The result was cheers from both sides. Countless excited audience members enjoyed the official performance provided by the club. They were amazed by the realistic and tragic scene. As expected of a night of crime, the gunshots and blood were so realistic. Yuriko, look at the way this person is wailing on the ground. It's like his bones are really broken. Even the ear-piercing alarm is so ingenious. It's so realistic to simulate an attack and a gunfight. It's so good a drink. Waiter, give me a bottle of Salute. Waiter? Waiter. F***CK. Where's the waiter? Forget it. I don't care. Big Brother is awesome. There was no need for alcohol or beauty. The guests whose eyes were burned red by violence screamed crazily. They cheered for the performance. Even the burly messenger who sneaked in to help was stunned. He had never seen such a thing. How could it be like this? By the time the guests on the second floor were awakened from their intoxicated dreams by the noise outside the door, it was already too late. The young man who was covered in blood had already pushed the door open. He smiled at the mess inside and nodded politely. Sorry to disturb you. I'm here to give you the gifts. The gifts included 200,000 volts of electric shock, Beretta 9mm caliber bullets, and a sumo shogun that could destroy all poisonous insects and human traffickers' heads after 10 minutes of practice. The gifts were evenly distributed to the guests and staff who should have booked a private room in hell. If they encountered them in the corridor, they would be planted in the corridor floor. If they encountered them in the room, they would be hung on the ceiling chandelier. If they encountered them in the toilet, they would be flushed down the toilet. This was a slow and incomparably efficient bloodbath, a massacre that didn't spare anyone whose hands were stained with blood. Run, run. Huaisha turned around and looked at the dazed girls one last time. He whispered with pity, "You're free, even if it's only temporary," but the girls didn't seem to understand him. They were still intoxicated by the effects of the forbidden drugs. They giggled and pulled his trousers. They invited him to join them. Huaisha closed his eyes, turned around, and walked to the elevator that led to the top floor. In the shrill sound of the fire alarm, the fire and thick smoke danced under the torrential rain of fire sprinklers. The locked elevator burst out a whine and opened to both sides with the help of two hands. Inside the empty elevator shaft, the cables were swaying rapidly as if someone was crawling. When Huaisha lowered his head, he saw a frightened face looking up at him. "Hello." Huaisha politely waved and greeted him. Then he pointed the stun baton in his hand to the man's face and asked softly, "Do you know where your boss is?" The blood-stained face looked down at him. The cold eyes were filled with darkness and malevolence. Being stared at by those eyes, he felt as if his soul was about to be sucked away. "Upstairs, upstairs." The man who escaped answered in a panic. He's in the safe room." "Okay, thank you." Huaisha nodded and thanked him sincerely. Then he pressed the button. Goodbye. Lightning flashed. Amidst the muffled screams, the sound of a heavy object falling to the ground rang out from the bottom of the elevator shaft. It was so crisp. Finally, he raised his head and looked upstairs. Trash. You're all trash. In the sealed safe room, Sergei almost crushed the phone in his hand. So many people. So many guns. You can't even do anything to a bastard. What's the use of raising so many of you? Where are the ascenders? Where are the ascenders we invited? On the other end of the phone, the frightened voice replied, they're also dead. It's another man I've never seen before. Help! The screams rang out, but soon they stopped abruptly. Soon, with the sound of heavy footsteps, the phone that had fallen to the ground was picked up from the pool of blood and put to the ear of the messenger from Green Sunday. Hello? Is anyone there? Sergei subconsciously held his breath and didn't say anything. He looked at himself in the mirror in fear, afraid that an invisible ghost would appear behind him. Hello, Mr. Sergei. Nice to meet you. The young man on the other end of the phone introduced himself politely. You may have heard of me. My name is Feng Jian, Green Sun's Feng Jian. I'm here to obtain justice for my compatriots, including the 51 lives you secretly sold in the past 3 years, as well as the countless pitiful people who died because of it. If the one who came today was my father when he was young, he would definitely say this, right? But don't worry, since this matter has been handed over to me, it definitely won't become a condescending crusade. A person like me really doesn't have a sense of justice to speak of, and I don't have a strong sense of honor like my father. He paused for a moment, enjoying the glimmer of hope that rose in Sergei's heart on the other end. Then he grinned and smiled sinisterly. So, I don't need those high-sounding reasons and excuses. I want to do something because I want to do it. It's just like how I want to kill you in a stinking ditch. It's just purely because I want to trample on a bastard like you to death. In the midst of Sergei's angry curses, he whistled in satisfaction and finally said goodbye. Now it's time to die. Sergei, listen to the footsteps from hell. Following his words, the sound of heavy footsteps gradually came from outside the safe house. Separated by a thick wall and a dozen centimeters of alloy interlayer, the distant sound of breathing seeped into the enclosed space. Then the entire floor suddenly shook. Countless dust rustled and flew up. Then there was another shake. After 2 consecutive roars like that of a pile driver, wind surged on the other side of the wall amidst the dead silence. Deep breaths. Then, immediately after, push hands. A clear palm print appeared on the cracked wall. Then a second, a third, and even a fourth, a loud sound spread out. Hell was ringing. 15 minutes later, the shrill sound of a fire alarm rang out from the street, accompanied by customers fleeing in panic. Dozens of fire trucks roared toward the burning building. And just 2 streets away, Huaishir, who had changed into a t-shirt, washed his face at the tap in the park and returned to the van. He wiped the water droplets on his face that hadn't dried yet. His face was pale, and he took the initiative to apologize before they could say anything. Sorry, I screwed up. Feng Jian, who had been smoking and waiting for the good news, was stunned for a long time. He didn't expect to receive such a result. He ran away. Feng Jian couldn't believe it. Could it be that he has some helpers? No, I didn't let him run away. Huaishir lowered his head in shame and handed over a soft plastic bag. But that, how should I say it? I was too used to it and forgot that you're going to cut off his head. I was careless, and it was smashed. The plain man in his arms was too ashamed to show his face. It was an epic mistake, too outrageous. After not using a weapon, he actually forgot to cut off his head. In desperation, he could only go downstairs and get a plastic bag and a dustpan to scoop up the pile of things on the ground. In any case, it was as good as having his head here. I'm new here and don't know the rules. I hope Green Sun's big brother won't mind. Why don't we just make do with it? Chapter 708. In the end, Green Day's people still took the plastic bag away. He didn't know what they were going to do with it. But it was Green Day, so it wasn't strange that they had a lot of perverts. Maybe they could use it somewhere. Otherwise, why would a normal person want someone else's head? For the time being, he had passed the test. After receiving the proof of allegiance, everyone was a hero of Liangshan. In the future, they would eat meat, drink wine, and divide the gold. Once they killed their way into the British Isles, occupied London, and captured the decision-making room of the Command Bureau alive, the big boss would become the emperor, the small boss would become the second emperor, and you would continue to be a traitor. Thinking of this, Huaishur couldn't help but sigh. He sat in the front passenger seat, smoking and worried. In the driver's seat, Fujimoto took out a thick envelope and handed it over. Okay, don't be so sad. This is your share. Huaishur pinched the thickness of the envelope and opened it. He found that it wasn't Ingzhou's currency, which had a large exchange rate, but the powerful origin substance exchange currency, US dollars. They were all of the largest denominations. There was actually around 300,000 in one package. According to the ratio of 4-to-1, it was equivalent to 1,200,000 Dongxia dollars. This, Huaishur was stunned. This is for me? He was full of amazement, but he wasn't surprised by the number. Instead, he sighed with emotion. How did you villains really get paid for the work you did? Just treat it as a windfall. This kind of work is very rare. Those two didn't take it, and I didn't do anything. If you need money urgently, I'll just give it to you. Fujimoto felt his heart ache. He asked reluctantly, how about, I'll hold it for you first. You're so young. You'll definitely spend money recklessly. I'll give it to you monthly. Don't worry, do you think the boss will swallow your money? Hee. Huaishur revealed a simple and honest smile and put the envelope in his pocket. He had an expression that said, I don't know what you're talking about. You still want the money in my hands. Before he could finish his thoughts, AI Ching reminded him, Huaishur, stolen money needs to be recorded and filed. The money in his hands instantly lost its fragrance. Huaishur lowered his head sadly. His whole body trembled, and his hands and feet were cold. He almost couldn't hold back his tears. Why is your astronomy society even more ruthless than Green Sun? Fujimoto noticed the change in his expression and thought of his file. He thought that he was thinking of his parents who were seriously ill. He sighed and raised his hand to pat his shoulder. All right, don't be sad. So many people from the Russian Federation died today, and we have to celebrate. How about we call everyone for supper? It's my treat. I know a barbecue restaurant that serves peony hot pot. It tastes really good. It was obvious that he was hungry after watching Huaishur sweep everything away. Without waiting for Huaishur's response, he took out his phone and called out the cadres of the Fujimoto group one by one. He wanted to use this opportunity to formally introduce Huaishur to the team members. The van drove Huaishur around the city before finally stopping at a street with a cluster of taverns on the outskirts of the inner circle of Dombu City. There were already people waiting there. They went out in the middle of the night. They were still meticulously dressed in black suits. When they saw Fujimoto one by one, they spread their legs, put their hands on their knees, and bowed 90 degrees to Fujimoto. They respectfully called out, Dear brother. On the contrary, Fujimoto, who was wearing sportswear, smiled and waved his hand, indicating that they shouldn't be so serious. He wanted to introduce a little brother to everyone. As he spoke, he pointed at Huaishur. We will be a family in the future. As his elder brothers, you must guide him more, understand? Yes. Everyone nodded in unison, and then they became a little more casual. Everyone chatted and laughed with each other, but no one took Huaishur, the newcomer, seriously. Among them, Huaishur's introducer, Tanaka's sworn brother, Yamashita, glanced at him with obvious displeasure. He meant that the newcomer didn't know the rules at all. Hurry up and curry favor with the big brothers and greet them one by one. Huaishur just pretended not to see it. He shook his bangs and followed behind, smoking a cigarette, and looked at the lights on both sides of the street. Who do you think you are? Soon, they stopped in front of an izakaya. Obviously, they had been here countless times. As soon as Fujimoto entered the door, he waved to the woman behind the counter. Oh, Ms. Jin Jiang, long time no see. How's business recently? It's nothing. The female boss, who was engrossed in accounting, raised her head and nodded enthusiastically. It's all thanks to your care. The private room is ready. Please come in, gentlemen. After saying that, she politely led the way in front and invited them into the private room. After giving them handkerchiefs and sake, she considerately closed the door for them. Soon, The dishes were served continuously. To Huaishi's surprise, Fujimoto really didn't brag. This restaurant was really good, and the taste was much better than ordinary. Even an ordinary cold tofu had a unique taste. Well, although the craftsmanship was a little worse than his and couldn't be compared with Feng Shu. With wine and food to drink, Huaishi was too lazy to care about other things. Anyway, he was going to get a free meal. It was true that he was undercover, but he had been a second wheel for so many years. Would he really go and kiss a cold ass at the foot of the mountain? On the other hand, the others seemed to take care of Huaishi and spoke gently to him. After several rounds of toasts, Huaishi became more and more pleasing to the eye. A few of the mixed-race seniors drank to their heart's content and simply took off their disguises, smoking and scratching their feet. Some of them even sang along with Fujimoto. Wailing like ghosts and howling like wolves, they finally looked a little bit like the extreme Tao. Huaishi, who was silently watching from the side, raised his head and drank the wine in his cup, sighing silently. I feel that they are actually very humane, right? AI Qing's voice came from the communication device. Indeed, it's a little unexpected. No matter how heartless a person is, maybe they will also raise a cat, Huaishi. She smiled coldly. If I had known, I would have let you go to the Yoshida Kai first to experience the abyss of suffering as an underling. When the company started, the boss would say that everyone is a family. When the shares are distributed, do you think you'll have a share? Huaishi was speechless. AI Qing raised her head and looked at the organizational structure of the Fujimoto Group on the big screen. She began to introduce the business scope of the other Fujimoto Group members and the information of several leaders to Huaishi one by one. Group leader Fujimoto, Wakitsuma, brother Toshino, consultant Takuma, headquarters Nagatama, headquarters Nagatsuyama, and Wakitsuma Takazawa. Just the sentences of the few people here were enough for a newborn baby to stay in prison for 5 generations. As a small gang with only more than 70 official members, the Fujimoto Group was barely able to stand in the inner circle of Danbua. In addition to relying on the shooting of some conventional movies and usury, they also relied on human resources and other intermediary work. Usually, they would introduce some mixed-race fellows to do illegal work and extract a high harvest from it. For some mixed-race fellows, it was good enough to not starve to death if they had a job. The Fujimoto Group was simply a great philanthropist. As for sending wreaths and guarding the small steel ball shop, it was not worth mentioning at all. Sending wreaths in Yingzhou was not as serious as sending wreaths in Dongxia. It was almost like sending a flower basket in the name of the company when there was a new store on the street. It was a euphemistic notice. Brother, pay the protection fee. Such a third-rate gang could survive for more than 10 years. First, it relied on the flexible mind of the group leader Fujimoto. He was used to changing the rudder according to the wind and could always open up a new source of income. Second, it relied on the support given by Green Sun as a former peripheral member to get the care of the 5 bosses. Considering the recent frequent actions of Green Sun, it was an opportunity to enter the inner circle of Green Sunday. If it were not for this reason, AI Qing would not put Huaishi here. Looking at it now, it was a wonderful move. After joining Green Sun, he was obviously regarded as a confidant by Fujimoto, and his status in the Fujimoto Group also rose. However, what confused Huaishi more was the purpose of Green Sun itself. What are the guys in Green Sun doing? He took a bite of the plate of edamame in front of him and pondered. No matter how much he hated and feared Green Sun, he couldn't deny that they did bring a temporary peace to this group of helpless mixed-race fellows. A notorious terrorist organization in the whole territory would infiltrate Yingzhou at all costs just to stand up for a group of trafficked mixed-race girls. Isn't this normal? Are you falling into dualism again? Are you plugged in diodes in your head? AI Qing sighed with a headache. Just like the Astronomy Society, such a huge organization must have a dark side. Green Sun can become the largest terrorist organization in the whole territory. How can it not have a bright spot worth bragging about? Huaishi paused for a moment. You want to say that Green Sun is indeed the protector of justice of the mixed race? From the perspective of brutality and bloodshed, Green Sun may really be similar to the previous group of gods, but they may not be just and benevolent. AI Ching asked coldly, "Do you know the original origins of the so-called extreme Tao, Yakuza, and even the Mafia?" Without exception, in the beginning, they were just mutual aid organizations like the Sobriety Club. Can you say that it is wrong to help each other? People yearn for order and can't live in turmoil and chaos. The game can only be played when there are rules. No one likes a world where you can't even buy a box of batteries. But do you know how many steps are needed to produce batteries? From raw materials to rough processing, sending it to the factory, and finally sending it to the world as a product. Finally, you spend money from the convenience store and put it into your remote control. It relies on a set of universal order. If people want to live, they have to rely on the existence of order, no matter how bad the order is. But if they can't get protection from the order, if they're abandoned by the original order, then people will instinctively turn to other places and look for places that can protect themselves. This has nothing to do with the goodness or evil of people. After justice and due rights are gone, helpless people can only huddle together for warmth, seek new authority, rely on village conventions, clans, or organizations, even if these authorities are more blatantly corrupt and ferocious. You should have seen that movie, right? The civilians' love for the Godfather is their worship for this authority. You know that he is a bloody figure, but you need someone who can stand up for you, a savior who can protect you. Especially in Yingzhou, where discrimination is almost on the table, you can't survive if you don't huddle together. It's a pity. Why sure, for many people, Green Sun is the savior, and the Astronomy Association is too far away. In the silence, Huaisher couldn't help but shake his head. But do they have a choice? If there's a choice, aren't they even more abominable now? AI Ching replied coldly, "You can say that I was forced by life. People like me who are standing on the shore are just lucky. It's easy for you to say that. However, if you choose a way of life that can't be seen in the light, you shouldn't be afraid that something will eat you in the dark, and you shouldn't blame the hunter for becoming your enemy. People who are unwilling to fall may die painfully, but there is no cure for those who are willing to fall. Don't forget, in order to subvert the Astronomy Association, Green Sun is willing to do anything, even if blood flows like a river. Don't forget what you are here for." Huaisher sighed and asked, "Can't the Astronomy Association help them? Aren't we helping them? Otherwise, what are we doing?" "No, I mean go one step further." "Sorry, that's impossible. The Astronomy Association is not allowed to interfere with national sovereignty and internal affairs. After all, the rules of the Directorate of Defense can't cover all places, nor can it cover everything." In the quiet office, AI Ching raised her eyes and looked at the city outside the blinds. If the Directorate of Defense really controls the world, who can guarantee that the Directorate of Defense won't become the next utopia? Huaisher didn't say anything else. Unable to stand the thick smell of smoke in the room, he found an excuse to go to the bathroom and sneaked out to get some fresh air while a group of drunk guys were talking. The wine house was silent. In the middle of the night, all the guests downstairs had left, the tables and chairs had been cleaned up, the door was open, and a cool breeze blew in from the night. The lady boss was wiping the lampshade and chatting with the guests in front of the bar. When she saw him coming down, she asked enthusiastically, "Do you need anything else? As for the wine, it will be ready soon." "No, I just came down for a walk." Huaisher pointed at the bar. "Do you mind if I sit here? If possible, please give me a beer, the same as this gentleman's." The burly guest sitting next to the bar raised his eyes and glanced at him as if he was disgusted, but he didn't say anything. His dark skin was full of sun, and there was a faint smell of fish scales and the smell of the sea. He was a fisherman. He gobbled up the rice and fried chicken like a whirlwind. He raised his hand and drank all the beer in the cup. "Mr. Takahashi, is today's taste good?" "Yes, Ms. Zhang's cooking has always been good. I'm full." The fisherman, Takahashi, grinned and tried to curry favor. Unfortunately, his rough facial features and stubble could almost scare a child. Huaisher sensed that something was amiss and felt a little awkward. He had come down to be a third wheel. No wonder the man hated him. He picked up the beer and drank 2 mouthfuls. He was about to find an excuse to go back when he heard footsteps outside the door. A haggard man walked into the wine house tiredly. "Sorry to disturb you." He held an old photo in his hand and asked eagerly as soon as he entered the door, "May I ask?" Huaisher, who was about to leave, stopped and looked up in surprise. He saw a familiar face. It was his opponent and good teammate in the cooking competition, the head chef of Sun Tu, Shun Jinqing. So, the figure he saw during the day was him? Shun Jinqing was also stunned. He looked at the lady boss behind the counter in a daze. The photo in his hand trembled, and he almost couldn't hold it firmly. "Tao!" He staggered forward, widened his eyes, and looked at the face that appeared countless times in his dreams. He almost burst into tears. "Miss Tao, is it you?" Clang! The empty glass in the lady boss's hand fell to the ground. Chapter 709. It could only be said that the scene was very awkward. Huaisher stood dumbfounded at the side, unable to react. He didn't understand why Shun Jinqing, a dignified cooking demon, would come to an izakaya in the inner circle of Donghua. And before this, it seemed that he had spared no effort to inquire about it for a long time. Shun Jinqing couldn't care so much anymore. He moved to the front of the bar, step by step, not noticing the existence of other people at all. There was only the stunned woman left in his eyes. "Miss Tao, it's really you, it's really you." He grabbed the lady boss's hand and was so excited that he was about to cry. I finally found you." Atao's hand stiffened, and she subconsciously withdrew it. She said dryly, "Mr. Shun Jinqing, please calm down. It's still business hours." Sorry. Shun Jinqing finally realized that he had lost his composure. He quickly took a step back and raised his sleeve to wipe his red eyes, showing a solemn and sincere expression. He took another step back, bent down, knelt on the ground, and lowered his head deeply. "I know that suddenly coming to you will disturb you, but please accept my apology." He lowered his head and sincerely begged, "Please forgive me for leaving without saying goodbye last time, and please give me another chance. This is my lifetime request, Miss Tao." He raised his head and stared into her eyes. He said loudly, "Please let us start again, Tao. This time, I will never let you leave me." He mustered up his courage and said what he should have said long ago. "I have been in love with you for a long time. Please marry me." Huaisher felt that his hand was almost unable to hold the cup. The melon stuffed into his mouth was so big that he couldn't react. What was this guy thinking? Suddenly, he came to her door without any foreshadowing. Just like that, he proposed to her out of the blue. "Big brother, it's not unreasonable for you to be single for so many years. Even the plot of childhood sweethearts isn't like this. How can you ask her to marry you as soon as you come to her door after not seeing her for so many years? If you ate one less puffer fish, you wouldn't be so rash, right?" The first to react was not the lady boss, but the furious fisherman Gao Qiao. "Bastard, what the hell are you talking about?" The burly man couldn't restrain his anger. He reached out and violently pulled Shun Jinqing up from the ground. He stared at his face and was so angry that his beard and hair stood on end. He growled, "I've heard about it for a long time. You're the stalker who asked about Ms. Jiang everywhere. How dare you come here?" Without waiting for Shinjin to answer, Takahashi raised his fist and wanted to kill the scum who came to harass them here. Huaisher, who reacted, quickly reached out and tried to grab Gao Qiao's arm. The lady boss was even faster than him. She didn't know whether she should be called Ms. Jiang or Miss Tao, but at this moment she stood in front of Shun Jin, blocking this battle that was about to break out. "Please don't be like this. This is my personal matter. Let me deal with it." I'm not." Gao Qiao was stunned, and his livid face gradually solidified. Perceiving the sincerity in her expression, he seemed to understand something, and his expression suddenly became gray. He let go of her hand. Wearily, he returned to his seat and lowered his head to drink wine. The dejected look on his face made him look like a defeated fighting dog. "Miss Tao, I knew it. Shinjin looked at her in surprise. "You have me in your heart, don't you?" "I'm sorry, Shinjin-kun." In front of Shinjin, The lady boss opened her mouth several times, wanting to say something, but in the end, she lowered her eyes and politely refused. Thank you for going through so much trouble to find me. It's great to be able to reunite with an old friend. But unfortunately, I don't agree to your request. Please go back. Why? Don't you know my feelings for you? It's because of the child, right? I don't mind. It doesn't matter. I will treat her as my own daughter. We can raise her together. You don't deserve to raise his child. This sentence was imagined by Huaisha next to him. He couldn't stand it anymore. These two operations were not at the level of eating rice. They were directly planting rice in his mouth. He slapped his forehead and couldn't watch it anymore. He was so anxious. Atao didn't speak. She just looked at him silently and shook her head slightly. Shinjin's face turned pale little by little. It doesn't matter if the child doesn't change her surname. Really, he begged humbly, almost crying. Don't you understand my sincerity? He couldn't hold back his tears and sobs anymore. I just want to spend my life with Miss Atao. Sorry, Shinjin-kun, I can't promise you. Atao bent down and refused without any euphemism. But I'm married, have a new family, and have a new family. So, please don't come to me in the future. With that, she looked back at Takahashi, who was drinking behind her. Takahashi was holding a wine glass in his hand and hadn't reacted yet. He looked at her blankly and didn't understand what she meant. In a short silence, Tao's eyes gradually begged. Huaisha sighed and gave the dog a fierce kick onto the table, causing him to finally come to his senses. He suddenly realized what was going on and stared at Shinjin with wide eyes. Bastard, didn't you listen to her? With a slap on the table, Takahashi raised his voice. Don't let me see you here again. In the dead silence, Shinjin K's figure bent down little by little. The light and expectation in his eyes gradually extinguished. His face was ashen. I'm sorry. It's me. I disturbed you. He turned around in a sorry state and staggered away. Without looking back, he rushed into the darkness of the night and disappeared. Only the sound of lamentation came from afar. Atao quietly stared in the direction of his departure and didn't say anything. For a long time, she lowered her head and wiped the corners of her eyes. She turned back and forced a smile to her guests. Sorry, I made a fool of myself. I also caused trouble for Mr. Takahashi. No, I have nothing to do with it. I. Takahashi patted his chest and widened his eyes. His face was red and he wanted to say something. He was so anxious that he even spoke in dialect. But looking at her calm appearance, he couldn't speak. He slowly lowered his head wearily. Please give me another glass of beer. Huaisha sighed and handed over the beer glass in his hand. He looked back in the direction of the door and sighed helplessly. If you ask me, that guy should be a good person. Atao shook her head and didn't speak. Takahashi stared over and motioned him to say less. If Huaisha hadn't reminded him just now, he might have scolded him now. It's not good to drink alone. There's a little octopus and tofu. Take it as an apology for the trouble. Behind the kitchen counter, the lady boss was preparing the dishes neatly. Soon, 2 dishes were served to go with the wine. While she was busy, Huaisha looked up at the wall behind the counter and the photo next to the business license. Kyoto Middle School Painting Competition Silver Award, near Jianglina. The little girl in the photo was holding the trophy and smiling brightly, but her face was slightly pale. The sleeve that was deliberately pulled down still couldn't hide the bruised color on the back of her hand. It was a trace left by the swelling of the blood vessels due to too many injections. Did something happen to that child? Huaisha asked curiously. Immediately, Gao Qiao glared at her from the side, indicating that she shouldn't mention it. The landlady paused, shook her head and sighed. Nothing. That child, like you, is a guest. Huaisha touched the horn on his forehead subconsciously. He forgot to cover it when he was drinking in the private room. Now he realized it. In fact, you don't have to care. It's just a thing of the past. The landlady had calmed down. She took out a cigarette box from her pocket and asked the two. After seeing that the two had no objection, she nodded and said that she was rude. Then she tilted her head and lit it. When I was under a lot of pressure, I got a bad habit. When I got older, I wanted to change it, but I couldn't. She smiled helplessly. Anyway, it's all over, isn't it? Huaishur hesitated for a long time and asked curiously, single mothers are not uncommon. Isn't it good to start over? In the silence, he noticed that the two people looked at him strangely, as if they were looking at a child who didn't understand anything. It was as if they were asking, "Are you really from Yingzhou?" Huaishur had nothing to say. He raised his hand and patted his forehead. He had forgotten the feelings of the people in this damn place. It wasn't easy for a single mother to live anywhere, let alone with a mixed-race child. Ms. Jin Jiang, or Miss Atao, didn't avoid the past. After the age of a little girl, she had seen through everything. In her words, it was just a stupid thing she had done when she was young. When she was young and ignorant, she was deceived by sweet words. After discovering that she was pregnant, the other party continued to disappear overnight with all her belongings. When the hospital found out that the child was a mixed-race child, my father was very angry. After all, it was a disgrace to the family. He strictly ordered me to abort it. But I was stupid. What crime did the child commit? She smoked and sighed softly. In fact, everyone knows that Fukasaku likes me. He won't care. My father is his master. As long as there is an order, he will not refuse. But that would be too unfair to Fukasaku. As a result, because I didn't know what was good for me, I was kicked out of the family. After I broke contact with my family, I worked everywhere. I was in a difficult situation, but Fukasaku often came to help me. He never disliked me. It really made me ashamed. After she said this, she was silent for a long time. Then she shrugged self-deprecatingly. At some age, some things are missed. He is already the head chef of Sun 2. His future is limitless. People like me will only drag him down. Fukasaku, who is already successful and famous, would only become a laughingstock in the eyes of others if he married a woman with a mixed-race child. Huaishur shook his head and comforted her. As long as you are willing, he won't care. I care. Through the candlelight, her eyes were calm and silent, like a stone. The last bit of dignity left whispered softly, I care. Then Huaishur did not speak again. He put away his self-righteous kindness and fulfilled the role of a guest. After drinking, he turned and went upstairs. Takahashi was already drunk. He cried and shouted nonsense. He staggered away. When Huaishur and others came down again, they could not see him. Only the calm landlady politely sent them out of the door. After walking far away, Huaishur looked back and saw the landlady standing behind the door. She picked up the bamboo pole, took down the lantern at the door, lowered her head, and blew it out. She turned back to the shop and closed the door. The lights inside gradually went out. It was closed. Chapter 710. Late at night, in the office. Draft for the protection of rights and interests of beastmen. Census of Donbua Inner Circle. Survey of Beastmen Community in Yingzhou. History and key files of the Anesthetic Tracking Alliance. Under the cold light, confidential files were casually thrown on the table one after another, overlapping each other. AI Ching closed her eyes and rubbed her swollen eyes. She felt the absurd nature of this country from the bottom of her heart. Yingzhou, which was known for its openness and multiculturalism, was actually the most conservative and xenophobic place in the world. Passers-by in a hurry would not have time to pay attention to the interior under the bright appearance in front of the colorful scenery. Instead, they would admire the open and civilized appearance. For the native people here, the country had never changed because of outsiders. Even the general, the ghost from America, could not change the deep-rooted concepts and thinking that had long been ingrained in the inheritance. It was true that Yingzhou, which suffered a heavy setback 70 years ago, could hardly be called a sovereign country now. It could not even have a violent institution like the army. The Ascender Institution, Looming Hall, and the Elite Four seat could only exist as a gathering place for the Chinese and the Emperor's guards. They could not appear in the meeting of the Central Bureau in the form of an official institution. Even the name of the Chinese had long been abolished. But that was only a nominal disappearance. In fact, everyone knew what was going on. The high officials and dukes of the past just continued to rule the country in a different way. They chose one tool after another and pushed it to the front to bear the anger from the people on their behalf. and they themselves hid behind the scenes through the overlapping of shares. They continued to be rooted in this land with a pervasive and terrifying influence. All kinds of accumulated abuses led to a completely different situation here from other countries. Under the intentional or unintentional indulgence of all parties, all kinds of bizarre and barbaric growth occurred. In addition to the peace and tranquility on the surface, all the places where the sun could not find were filled with demons. It could be said that some places would become a literal no-go zone once it was dark. According to the statistics of the Astronomical Association, more than 30% of the border smugglers came from the borders of Yingzhou. At the same time, this chaos and indulgence also brought a lot of wealth to Yingzhou and even led to investment in various peripheral industries. With a large border extending from Kyoto, Yokosuka, as the axis, Yingzhou formed the largest border hub in the entire Asia. It was also the largest border material circulation channel in the present state. At the same time, it also became one of the main gathering places for beastmen in the entire territory. Edo, Osaka, and even the capital had moldy spots like the Donbua inner circle that many important people despised. Hybrids who couldn't obtain a proper position under the sun would throw themselves into the darkness and exist in every corner of this class. The main body was the Extreme Tao Alliance, which was formed by 5 mixed-race large guilds and societies under the initiative of the 5 big bosses. Their influence covered almost every aspect of the mixed races' lives. A Yingzhou beastman had been dealing with them since he was born, from unlicensed hospitals and unlicensed doctors to education, catering, pharmaceuticals, and even work. Strictly speaking, there was not much of a strict subordinate relationship between Green Sun and the 5 big bosses. The two sides were more similar to a deep alliance. Green Sun needed the influence of the present state, and the 5 big bosses also needed the support of Green Sun's strength. Everyone knew that the other party was their important arm, indispensable and irreplaceable, so they could only continue to exist as one. In the end, this behemoth called the Anesthetic Pursuit Alliance was formed, together with the Russian Federation's K-Party, the Six Directions Society, the Heavenly Fool Company, the Iron King Party, the Illumination Cult, and other organizations. They formed the underworld of Yingzhou, a cruel system unique to the lawless zone. Not only were the mixed races planning a riot, but now the secret struggle in Kyoto was getting more and more intense. If the source of all this turmoil was traced back, it would be more and more unbelievable. The root cause was the proposed consumption tax increase proposed by the Legislative Court of Yingzhou 2 months ago. When the population growth index was decreasing year after year, the society was aging, the huge gap in pension reserves, and the prevalence of low consumerism, the continuous attacks had made the entire social system, which was glued together by harsh order suppression and a high welfare system, in danger. In short, the government was out of money. In order to maintain the existence of the welfare system, the tax increase was necessary. Even if it was to quench their thirst, they couldn't care less. The industries affected would involve the entire society. Oil, electricity, transportation, agriculture, everything that could be produced and consumed would be reevaluated. 2 months ago, when this proposal was proposed, it had already caused an uproar. Because of this, the struggle became worse and worse. In the end, it had become another competition between the Wu family and the Gong family. As the central government, there was such a natural contradiction between the Gong family and the Wu family, who secretly divided the local areas. The giant enterprises and societies added fuel to the fire, and the oppression and discrimination against the mixed races became more and more intense. If left alone, the riot of the mixed races would most likely cause a large number of hidden contradictions to explode. Then, due to the chaos and uncontrolled destruction, they would be resisted and counterattacked by the entire Yingzhou. After everyone worked together to kill the mixed races, the social contradictions and hatred of the people would be transferred to them. They would get rid of the blame on their heads, and they would get a real benefit. It could be said that the benefits were endless. As for the death of a few mixed races, it was not a big deal. In this case, It was easy to understand the strange and indifferent attitude of both sides on this matter. Make a fuss, the bigger the better. Everything was just a carnival before the banquet began. Who knew how many people were rubbing their hands and could not wait? If this riot could not be resolved, and the future of the God City and the technology he had mastered were completely destroyed, the inner circle of Doomsday County would become hell. Just as AI Ching was thinking, a sharp sound suddenly came from the quiet office. A short and loud alarm. It came from a fist-sized object that looked like a counter beside her hand. In an instant, the number on the flipping page sign had changed from 0 to 1. AI Ching's expression froze for a moment. She could not believe it. In such a short time, the beacon had been activated once. Soon, the phone from the decision-making room rang. The news from the higher-ups of the central government confirmed her conjecture and confirmed the bad news. Yes, I know. I'm looking for clues. Yes, I will speed it up. Don't worry. I know. I will not let the resources of the building be used up. AI Ching nodded. She suppressed her anxiety and responded calmly. Only after hanging up the phone did she let out a long sigh. It seems that there is not much time left. She flipped open the irrelevant files on the screen and looked at the confidential information at the bottom, the familiar face in the photo. She felt unhappy from the bottom of her heart. Where did this bastard go? At the same time, Huaisher also woke up from his dream. There was no warning, no reason at all. For some reason, he felt a strange sense of peace in his heart. But after thinking carefully for a long time, he could not understand. He stared at the yellowed poster on the ceiling and quickly turned over to go back to sleep. Yes, in the snores of his roommates and the smell of their feet. At least tomorrow, I will go out and find a real place to live. Anyway, I will have to hand in the stolen money if I can't spend it all. I might as well get a better one. At the same time, in the capital late at night. At the scene of the fire outside Doomsday District, the sirens of the fire engine dissipated into the night. Pillars of water rose into the sky, extinguishing the last wisp of fire in the ruins and also poured on the young man's heart. Cold. Yuan Zhao, who had originally jumped out of the car with his trident and was about to go all out, gradually became disordered in the wind. The quiet night wind blew, bringing with it the mocking screams of the crows in the distance. There was no expectation of fighting 300 rounds with a strong enemy. There were also no underlings kowtowing. There was also no soul-stirring brave charge into the tiger demon's den, a fierce battle between dragons and tigers. Not to mention, there was no fantasy of a mixed-race little sister praising Brother Yuan Zhao for being so powerful. His mission target, along with the entire house, had long been burned to ashes. Hello, Big Sister Yi? There is definitely a problem with your divination. Yuan Zhao answered the phone with tears in his eyes. It's not that I don't want to work. Can't we do some missions in the world of the living? Don't talk about that Russian Federation guy. This damn place has already been burned to ashes. There are no clues at all. On the other side of the phone, Yi Xiao was silent for a long time. She once again lowered her head to look at the astrolabe in front of her, her eyebrows slightly raised. The stars above the capital actually broke without any warning. Perhaps her observation was wrong, but what if it was not? No matter what method was used, it showed that the capital's muddy waters were deeper than she had imagined. As expected, the job that Xin Yao threw over was not so easy to accept. She pinched her eyebrows, and her heart became heavy. Come back first, Yuan Zhao. Have a good sleep before daybreak. Yi Shuya smiled. Didn't you always complain that you haven't seen any famous places in Yingzhou? This time, I'll satisfy you. Hey, what do you want to do now? Yuan Zhao suddenly felt a little scared. Nothing. Tomorrow, we'll go see the general. Before hanging up the phone, Yi Shuya thoughtfully reminded him, remember to wear formal clothes. The next day at 8 o'clock in the morning, Huaisher, who was awakened by the sound of knocking on the door, saw that there were more than 40 missed calls on his phone before he could even go out to rent a room. All of them were from the higher-ups of the Fujimoto group. There were also a lot of messages and irritable urging, all of which were asking him to immediately call back or quickly contact them. In the end, he turned on the Do Not Disturb mode before going to bed yesterday and did not receive a single one. When the door opened, he saw the ashen-faced Shan Xia standing outside the door. What are you doing? Why didn't you pick up your phone? Huaisher awkwardly turned his head to look at the phone. It got a heat stroke. Cough, cough. It's out of battery. What are you doing, you scoundrel? Shanxia reached out and pulled him out by the collar. There's no time. Hurry up and leave. Hurry up. What the hell? Huaisher looked at him as if the sky had fallen and could not understand. Could it be that the Metropolitan Police Department has come to arrest us? Shanxia turned his head and coldly glared at him. He lowered his voice. Boss Fujimoto, I can't hold on much longer. Chapter 711. To be precise, it was Fujimoto who was dying. Everyone was familiar with Fujimoto, but what exactly was going on with Fujimoto's dying? Let Huaisher explain it to everyone. Fujimoto was dying. Actually, it was Fujimoto who was dying. Then why was Fujimoto dying? Everyone might be very surprised. How could Fujimoto die? But that was the truth. Huaisher was also very surprised. Then this was the matter of Fujimoto dying. Did everyone feel that it was very strange? Huaisher also felt that it was very strange, because along the way, he had asked everyone for a long time. Everyone said the same thing, but no one could figure out. Everyone welcomed him to discuss it with them in the comment section. What was there to discuss? Talk about the same thing? Huaisher felt very uncomfortable. It was not until they arrived outside the hospital's emergency room that someone obtained the surveillance footage from the Metropolitan Police Department. It was probably early in the morning. Fujimoto wore a mask and came out of a private house. After seeing that there was no one around, he got into his van that was covered with inharmonious spray paint. Why is he acting so sneakily, like a thief? Huaisher asked subconsciously. Immediately, everyone turned to look at her. Little brother, do you know how to talk? Big brother was sneaking around. How could that be called sneaking around? However, the others were immediately curious. The houses in the video were built one by one, and Fujimoto's house was in a high-end apartment building. It was obviously not his own house. Immediately, they became suspicious. Should we investigate? Someone asked. Cough, cough. At the foot of the mountain coughed hard twice, looked elsewhere, and said in a low voice, Big brother has a woman outside. Don't talk nonsense. Sister-in-law is very strict. All right. So it turned out that he was going out to play with a mistress. But the problem was that he had already changed his clothes and wore sunglasses. Couldn't he have changed his car? Huaisher felt a headache. He probably drove straight to the door after drinking last night. He didn't even notice that he was driving such a flashy official car. In the end, he suffered retribution. Just after crossing the intersection, there was a car accident. Or rather, it was a premeditated collision. A truck directly rushed over from the side and slammed the van that was waiting in front of the traffic light against the wall. Then, he quickly reversed the car and hit it again. Finally, the driver with a mask jumped out of the car and checked the scene. He was shocked when he saw that Fujimoto was still able to climb out of the car basket. But after looking left and right and discovering that there was no one around, he actually took out a knife from his bosom, rushed forward and ruthlessly stabbed a few times, then turned around and fled. Bastard. Seeing this, how could the Fujimoto Gumi's cadres not understand that this was a deliberate assassination by the enemy? Unfortunately, the one who did it was an ordinary person who didn't know anything. He didn't know that he was a mixed breed. Although the blood of ghosts often made people violent, it also stimulated the glands to secrete a large amount of hormones that exceeded that of ordinary people. Even though he had been stabbed twice in the chest, stomach, and heart, he was still able to hold on until the passers-by called the police and the ambulance arrived. Revenge! We must avenge our boss. His brother, who was also the leader of the thugs, Shangye, immediately blushed and started roaring in the corridor of the hospital regardless of where he was. He kicked over the trash can next to him and roared, Where's everyone? Where the hell did everyone go? Come with me. Calm down, Shangye, Yamashita said coldly. You don't even know who the other party is. What's the use of getting angry? Finger. Huaisher, who was beside him, reminded him. He was new here, so he wasn't as rash as the others. He was staring at the screen of his cell phone. After everyone looked over, he pointed at the replay in the surveillance video. This person, The way he holds the knife is very strange. Although he's wearing gloves, his little finger should be missing. If it's not a mistake in operating the machine, it should only be extreme Tao, right? There's also something wrong with the way he walks. His right leg should have been broken before. There's even a steel plate. He should have just removed the stone. Before he finished speaking, he saw that Shangye's eyes were burning red. It must be the Tiger King team. That bastard Arasaka Tomoya. I want his life. Clang. The nurse who pushed open the door and walked out of the ward was shocked. The information board in her hand fell to the ground. Looking at the group of people with scars on their faces, she trembled and couldn't say a word. The patient said, she stuttered, wants to see his family. May I know who is Mr. Fujimoto's? Before she finished speaking, she was pushed aside by Yamashita. The group of people finally walked into the ward. They saw the serious face of the attending doctor. The patient is about to die. Everyone, be mentally prepared. What are you talking about? Bastard. Yamashita was instantly furious. She rushed forward with her eyes wide open and grabbed the doctor's collar. Are you cursing my big brother? Yamasha. A weak voice came from the hospital bed. Through the oxygen mask, Fujimoto widened his eyes and said with all his might, Yamashita, how humiliating are you going to be? It was hard to imagine that a dying person could still speak in such a sharp tone. After speaking, Fujimoto's mouth and nose were filled with blood vessels. His body convulsed violently. The life support machine let out a sharp sound. Even if he was a mixed breed, after being seriously injured by a car and stabbed in the vitals, it was already a miracle that he could survive until now. Anyone who saw that pale face would know that Fujimoto did not have long to live. Big brother, I'm sorry, big brother. Yamashita's eyes reddened when she heard this, and she knelt in front of the bed. The others gathered around, not daring to say a word. Fujimoto was obviously making arrangements for his death. On his deathbed, the man reached out and held Yamashita's hand with great difficulty. No, don't take revenge. This is retribution, my retribution. I was too arrogant to be involved in the private affairs of the 5 bigwigs. He panted violently. His forehead was flushed red, and the 3 ghost horns on his head were so scarlet that they were about to drip blood. But what was incredible was that his eyes lit up, and he was excited. It was terminal lucidity. He grabbed Yamashita's hand tightly and stared at him with great difficulty. Yamashita, you're my sworn brother. I'm most at ease with your character. In the future, you must not act on your own initiative. I will. I definitely will. Yamashita nodded repeatedly and sobbed. Please don't worry, big brother. I'll definitely bring the Fujimoto Gumi to greater heights. I won't let you down. Very good, very good. Fujimoto heaved a sigh of relief, and blood began to flow from his oxygen mask. In the future, the Fujimoto Gumi, the position of president of the Fujimoto Gumi will be handed over to Huaishiki. Dead silence. Dead silence came out of nowhere. Everyone in the ward froze in place. Nobody said a word. The only sound that could be heard was the monotonous sound of the machine alarm. They turned back in disbelief and looked at the man who was secretly stealing bananas from the fruit basket. Huaishir was dumbfounded. He was in a terrible state. He didn't even have time to throw away the banana peel in his hand. He looked at Fujimoto blankly. Big brother, are you out of your mind? Do you have to drag your crotch when you're saying your last words? Yamashita is pronounced Yamashia, not Kaishir. Is this the incompetence of your physical education teacher or the decline of your Mandarin teacher? I've only just joined your organization, so don't spout nonsense, all right? Be big brother, what did you say? No. Did you hear me clearly? Fujimoto panted heavily. I said in the future, Huaishiki will be the leader of the Fujimoto Gumi. The Fujimoto Gumi will be renamed to Huaishiki. Didn't you hear me? Are you going to go against my wishes? On the hospital bed, the man who was covered in blood raised his head and stared at their faces. His dark pupils were almost constricted into a small dot, and he looked very gloomy. Be big brother this. Huaishiki is still too young. Wakanaka Takawa of the Fujimoto Gumi said, Why don't we? Fujimoto closed his eyes tiredly and patted Yamashita's hand. Bang! A loud sound rang out like an iron hammer, striking everyone's hearts. Yamashita turned around, pulled out the pistol in his pocket, and aimed it at Takazawa's face. Before the blank face could react, he pulled the trigger. In an instant, blood splattered everywhere, and Takazawa fell on his back. Everyone was stunned, including Huaishir. Yamashita was expressionless. He only lowered his raised arm, ignoring the blood stains on the cuffs of his suit. Boss's meaning is very clear. The skinny middle-aged man looked around at everyone's faces. Who agrees? Who objects? Huaishir wanted to say that he objected. However, when he looked at the gun in Yamashita's hand and his red eyes, he wisely swallowed his saliva and did not say anything. Then, the matter of the second generation of the Fujimoto Gumi taking over the position of Huai Shiki quickly received everyone's unanimous approval and love. It was passed on the spot. Soon, under Fujimoto's signal, everyone left. Only the dying Fujimoto, Huaishir, and Takazawa's body on the ground were left in the ward. Fujimoto raised his hand with difficulty and pointed at his personal belongings beside him. The password of the phone is 663s. After I die, contact. Green Sun. Fujimoto said hoarsely, they will definitely help you. Huaishir was in a bad mood. He was looked at with eyes full of pleading and expectation. He suddenly became the second generation of the Extreme Do organization, and he was even a filmmaker. He couldn't react at all. Don't, big brother. Can't you change to someone else? He looked around, lowered his voice, and said in a low voice, I'm a spy. I really didn't want to do this. Fujimoto was not surprised. He was not even angry. I know, I guessed it, but I didn't say it. No one said it. Under the blood-stained oxygen mask, the corner of Fujimoto's mouth twitched as if he was smiling proudly. Why Shiki? How can there be a man who doesn't want to be an actor? Stop talking nonsense, big brother. We're talking about spies. Huaishir's eyes widened. He felt more and more confused. He couldn't figure out where he had exposed himself. Are you an idiot? Fujimoto shook his head slightly and looked at the face in front of him. He sighed tiredly, because there's no hatred in your eyes. He had already vaguely felt that there was something wrong with the person introduced by Tanaka. When Huaishir mentioned Green Sun, he already more or less understood. He clearly felt that this guy might be a spy, but unexpectedly, he couldn't hate him at all. The people of Green Sun didn't notice, but he saw it. Huaishir, who walked out of Aisha's house at that time, lowered his head to hide the expression that was about to cry, "Please, Lord Huai Jijun, please." He held Huaishir's hand tightly and used all his strength to repeat over and over again, "Please, everyone, I'll leave it to you." Huaishir was sluggish. He felt the hand holding him lose strength bit by bit. Finally, in the sharp sound of the electrocardiogram losing its fluctuation, Fujimoto lost his last breath. Only the gradually dimming empty eyes reflected the young man in front of him, until Huaishir lowered his head and nodded vigorously. "Don't worry," he promised in a low voice. "I'll save you. I definitely will." No one responded. Only the last trace of consciousness passed away in satisfaction, never to return. Chapter 712. In the hospital, in the quiet corridor, everyone was silent and did not speak. When the news of Fujimoto's impending death weighed heavily on everyone's heads, the original grace and calmness disappeared without a trace. There was no doubt that the change of leader was the most important thing for the unstable Fujimoto Gumi. They could not afford any more accidents. Originally, everyone was prepared for Yamashita to take over, but no one expected that the successor would not be Yamashita, who was the head, nor Ueno, nor Ojiwara, who was the head of the Fujimoto Gumi. Instead, it was Kaori Haim, who had only joined the gang for a day. Kaori Haim. The change was sudden. Regardless of whether everyone agreed or not, Fujimoto had already made up his mind. Before his death, he used the prestige that he had cultivated for so many years to force everyone to accept this reality. And those who did not accept it had already been personally executed by Yamashita. No one was given time to react. Gaoze, who had been through life and death together for so many years, had died under the gun of his own brother. Of course, everyone knew that he had some ulterior motives, but the decision at the foot of the mountain made everyone shudder. Now, Yamashita stood alone in front of the window, smoking with his back to everyone. He did not say a word, and no one could see his expression clearly. Ueno did not speak either. His gaze moved between Yamashita and the door of the ward, his expression gloomy. After a long time, Ojiwara, who was the finance and cashier, adjusted his glasses and spoke first. "I have a question that I want to ask first," he said. "Yamashita, I'm the oldest here, and even my grandson is about to be born. The person who doesn't want anything to happen to the Fujimoto Gumi the most is also me. If you think that I'm in the way, then you might as well kill me too." "Ojiwara, what nonsense are you talking about?" Ueno widened his eyes. "Didn't Gao-Zai just die? Why can't I die? We're Kyoto, Ueno," Ojiwara said calmly. "The survival of the gang depends on the leader and the rules. Everything can be sacrificed, but these two can't be shaken. If you offend them, even if it's your own people, you have to kill them, and you have to kill them more ruthlessly and decisively than outsiders. If Gao-Zai wants to be a hindrance and a black sheep, then he has to die. But Yamashita Kuro, I have something to ask you." Otaku asked. "What are you thinking? What do you think of the position of team leader?" He paused for a moment and asked coldly, "Can you really accept a newcomer who has only joined the Fujimoto Gumi for less than a day to ride on your head?" At the foot of the mountain, he finally turned around and looked at him. His eyes were bloodshot as he stared at him. Otaku looked over calmly. In the silent exchange of gazes, Yamashita finally opened his mouth and replied, "I've said it very clearly just now. Boss's intentions are my intentions. That's when the boss is still alive, but what if the boss is dead?" Otaku asked. "What if the new boss doesn't do anything? What if the new team leader can't tolerate you? Then send me to prison. I kill someone with my own hands. I have all the witnesses. There's nothing to deny." Shanxia lowered his head and glanced at the pistol in the inner pocket of his suit. His expression became calm. "This is the boss's arrangement. I have no objection. That was Fujimoto's final order. His coldness and decisiveness when he was dying. They had gone through so many years together. There was no need for more words and expressions. The moment he sighed, his determination had been conveyed to Yamashita. When he pulled the trigger, it meant that Yamashita's path as team leader was completely destroyed. It was not only a show of loyalty to the second-generation leader, but also a fatal weakness. If Yamashita was too powerful to control in the future, or if he wanted to make things difficult for Huaichi after Fujimoto's death, this evidence would be his express train to prison. In a way, this might be the last care for Yamashita's sworn brother. Unless it caused an extremely bad social impact, the law of Ingzhou would not sentence criminals to death. But the Kyoto Association. The rules of the Kyoto Association were stricter than the law. If Kinfin wanted Zifin to die, Zifin had to die. If Huaichi couldn't tolerate Yamashita, Yamashita couldn't live. For this, Yamashita was already prepared. At this time, the most uneasy person was not Yamashita or Otaku, but the most hot-tempered Ueno. Yamashita was Fujimoto's confidant, the person he trusted the most in the entire group. For so many years, he was loyal. Even if he told Yamashita to jump off a building immediately, Yamashita would not frown at all. Otaku was a civil servant. 20 years ago, he replaced Fujimoto's boss to go to prison. After he came out, he was already semi-retired. He only managed the company and assets on the surface. His position seemed to be stable, but whether he stayed or left was just a thought of the second-generation leader. After so many years, he had earned enough money. He would not do anything irrational. On the contrary, he was more concerned about whether the Fujimoto group could continue to exist stably, rather than being changed beyond recognition in the internal strife. Only Ueno was brainless. He had always been careless. What he did was also the work of a thug who licked blood from the tip of a knife. Now, Fujimoto's boss suddenly said that he would pass the position to a newcomer who had just joined the group. His brain did not react at all, and he did not know what to say. Gao Zei could not see the situation clearly, or it could be said that he was blinded by the position of team leader. Seeing that Yamashita could not take the position, he relied on his relationship with Yoshida Kai to think about it. He deserved to die. Moreover, before this, Fujimoto had already announced at the high-level cocktail party that Kaisher had become an official member of Green Sunday. With Green Sun as an arm, the Fujimoto group might be able to flourish in the future. However, no one knew what this new second-generation leader was thinking. Actually, everyone, there's no need to be so pessimistic. Weno forced a smile and tried to lighten the mood. Although we're all heartless extreme Taoists, Brother Fujimoto has never harmed anyone in his life. He must have his reasons for choosing Waikiki, right? No one spoke or responded. After a short silence, the rapid heartbeat alarm could be heard through the door. In the end, it was silent. Everyone's faces gradually turned pale. Fujimoto was dead. Whether they were willing or not, the Fujimoto group would change in the future. But at the same time, sorrow and sadness emerged from the bottom of their hearts. In the silence, everyone looked at each other and waited for orders from the other side. Only Yamashita lowered her head, took a deep breath, rubbed her eyes, and took the lead to walk to the door. She raised her hand and knocked on the door. No one responded behind the door. After a long time, a low voice was heard. "Come in." In the room behind the door, the man on the hospital bed had already passed away. He was no longer breathing. The figure with his back facing them sat on the chair in front of the hospital bed, smoking quietly. Green smoke slowly rose from his fingertips and curled up into the sunlight, shining in through the window. In the silence, he stared at the sunlight outside the window and did not speak. He was still dressed dispiritedly and casually, but for some reason, he felt different from the past. He was different from the day's young man just now. "Is everyone here?" The white figure in Kaishi's arms turned around. When his bangs were brushed up, his curved horns were exposed under the sunlight and were no longer hidden. His calm eyes swept across the crowd. After a long time, he nodded slightly. "If everyone is here, let's say goodbye to Mr. Fujimoto," he said. "You should all be grateful to him and remember his last kindness. Do you understand?" The owner of the pair of eyes told them, as if he was reprimanding an ignorant child. After giving the judgment condescendingly, no one was allowed to refute it. Yes, don't ask too many questions, and don't have to be suspicious. You just have to do as you are told. He was clearly a newcomer who had joined Extreme Tao on the second day, but his arrogant and fierce attitude made him seem like someone high above others. Being stared at by that pair of eyes, everyone couldn't help but shiver. But whether it was out of respect for the second generation's purpose or gratitude for Fujimoto's constant care, they had no reason to disobey. All of them bowed and respectfully said goodbye to the deceased on the hospital bed. No one spoke again until Kaisher finished his cigarette silently and put it out in the vase at the bedside. He turned his head and looked at the silent foot of the mountain. "Where's the pistol?" As he spoke, Huaisher stretched out his hand and beckoned to the foot of the mountain. He spread his fingers and waited. In the silent air, something tightened again. The foot of the mountain raised his head, and his expression twitched. He slowly raised his hand and pulled out the pistol from the holster in the inner pocket of his suit. His fingers seemed to fall on the trigger for a moment, but soon he let go as if he had been electrocuted. He held the handle of the gun as if he was holding a hot iron. He stiffly handed it over. Huaisher raised his hand, grabbed the body of the gun, and took the pistol out of his hand. Then he looked at the pistol in his hand. There was no problem with it, and there were no signs of rust damage. It was well maintained. He took out a silk handkerchief and simply wiped the body of the pistol and the handle of the pistol. After carefully wiping away the irrelevant fingerprints, he held the handle and raised it before everyone could breathe a sigh of relief. He pulled the trigger. The high-pitched sound rang out again. Gao Zei's body on the ground twitched and stopped moving. "The pistol is not bad. It's a rare American product. Give it to me in the future." He raised his eyes and gave the order to the surprised man. Without waiting for his permission, he casually put the pistol into his pocket. Finally, he turned around and told everyone, "The Fujimoto Gumi Wakaza Takthua, wanted to disobey my orders and intended to rebel. I have already killed him with my own hands. Do you understand? In the silence, everyone felt their hearts skip a beat when they were stared at by that pair of eyes. He couldn't help but bow down respectfully. Very good, this is a good start. No matter what, I hope that everyone can get along well in the future. Huaisher paused for a moment and turned back to look at the dead man on the hospital bed. After a long time, he looked away. Everyone, let's go and prepare for the funeral. He lowered his eyes and said softly, we have to let Mr. Fujimoto leave in peace. Chapter 713. The funeral only lasted for 3 days, and a farewell ceremony was held on the 4th day. For an extreme Dao expert, a funeral was not a rare thing. Although the bad news came in a hurry, the funeral was still in order. During the funeral, Fujimoto's wife was dissatisfied with the ownership of Fujimoto's inheritance and came with their children to make a fuss. However, they left resentfully when they didn't see Huaisher. Other than that, there were only some distant relatives. Some didn't even show up. The funeral was for the deceased relatives and friends, but the day of the farewell ceremony was the day that the colleagues came to visit. Under the drizzle of a cloudy day, the members of Fujimoto Group in mourning clothes stood in 2 rows in front of the door and bowed to the visitors. In the car that gradually stopped, Yamada Tihei looked at the scene outside and raised his eyebrows slightly. Aren't they making it look good? Fujimoto, that fellow, even chose to die such a troublesome time. I heard that it was done by the Tiger King team. That's what they said, replied the subordinate. He opened the door for him and held up the umbrella. The old man under the umbrella held the collar of his feather weave and walked toward the main door. Yamashita, in front of the door, bent down and bowed 90 degrees. It's been a long journey. You've worked hard. It's just 2 cities. It's not hard at all. Yamada chuckled and looked down. Yamashita, I heard that the new team leader isn't you. I'm incompetent. I'm already lucky to have the position of team leader. Yamashita lowered his head and replied, I really don't dare to covet the position of team leader. Haha, I'm just kidding. Look at how scared you are. The old leader of the Yamada group waved his hand and looked around. His expression gradually became surprised. What's wrong? I'm here to offer my condolences. Your new team leader won't even show his face? Sorry for the lack of manners. Yamashita maintained a 90-degree bow and replied, Team leader has other matters to attend to. He'll be here in a while. Please bear with him. Bastard, how dare you make our leader wait? The subordinate holding the umbrella was furious. He reached out and pulled Yamashita's collar, shouting angrily, How disrespectful. Are you looking down on us? That's enough, Irene. After all, this is a funeral and we are guests. Don't go overboard. Yamada Tihei patted his subordinate's arm and left Yamashita, who was bowing to him. He turned around and walked to the auditorium. After burning an incense stick, he looked at Fujimoto's face and sighed. Then, he turned around and walked into the side room to rest. Many of his old acquaintances had already arrived. It was very lively inside. When they saw him enter, many people raised their hands to greet him. Aya, everyone's here. Long time no see. Yamada found a seat in the middle and sat down. He looked around and asked knowingly, Didn't the people from the Tiger King team come? If they dare to come, I'm afraid there will be a fight today, right? I don't think so. The old man with burn marks on his face raised his eyes and glanced at the door outside. I heard that the Tiger King unit has already invited the 5 big bosses to mediate in the past 2 days. In order to protect his youngest son, that fellow Yuzaka has really put in a lot of effort. Yamada, on the other hand, you're asking the obvious. You must know something, right? What do you mean? I'm just an old man. I've already washed my hands of this business. How can I get involved in these things? Yamada picked up his teacup and asked casually, As for the Fujimoto team, I heard from the children that they're going to change their name to Huai Paper Group, right? Does anyone know them? I've been curious about the new team leader for a long time. There were a lot of rumors about the new team leader of Huai Paper Ancestor. Some said that he was an expert from Green Sun. Some said that he was a killing god at the border, and so on. However, none of them were reliable. Some even said that he was a mixed breed who had just joined the Fujimoto team, less than 2 days ago. There were really all kinds of ridiculous rumors. For a moment, no one knew what was going on in Tingmodo's head. They did not know what he was thinking before he died. However, everyone who came here experienced the new team leader's arrogance. From the beginning of the funeral until now, he hadn't shown his face at all. Even the few gangs that were originally close to him were now shut out. Their attitude also became distant and cold. Well, no matter what, he has to show his face. Won't we know when the time comes? Yamada smiled and drank his tea. He didn't say anything else. During the busy farewell ceremony, Yamashita, Kuro, who was the concierge outside the door, finally found the time to grab the person beside him and ask anxiously, "Where's the team leader? Where did the team leader go?" "No, I'm not sure." The subordinate shook his head blankly. He said that he drove out with Brother Shanya in the morning. He hasn't returned yet. Yamashita didn't feel good. What the hell did he mean by going out in the morning? Could it be that Shanya brought him to inspect the customs industry? For a moment, Yamashita felt a chill in his heart. Just as he was about to speak, he noticed a car parked in front of the door and a person coming out of the car. He was stunned. Big sister. Why are you here? It's my man's funeral. Can't I come?" The haggard woman held a confused child in her hand and glared at Yamashita. "I want to see what that guy called Huai Paper is doing." However, someone else came out of the car behind her. An old man in a black suit with a walking stick in his hand greeted Yamashita warmly. "Isn't this Yamashita? Long time no see. How have you been?" Yamashita was stunned for a long time. He subconsciously steadied himself and bowed to the visitor. "Excuse me for not going out to meet you, Mr. Bayuan." His heart had already sunk to the bottom. The visitor was a senior member of the Anesthetic Hunting Alliance, an envoy who could represent the opinions of the 5 big bosses. Now that he had come together with Fujimoto's widow, he probably didn't have good intentions. "Let's not waste time. I'm here today mainly for 3 things. Bayuan took off his hat and looked around calmly. He told him, "Firstly, I'm here to offer my condolences to Mr. Fujimoto on behalf of our old master. Secondly, I'm here to mediate the matter between the Fujimoto group and the Tiger King group. Lastly, it's about Mrs. Fujimoto seeking justice from us." At the foot of the mountain, Lord Sheng Tianmu was furious after hearing about what happened to Mrs. Fujimoto. He instructed me to deal with it as soon as possible. "I'm afraid I won't be able to save you any face." Amidst the cold rain, Yamashita was already drenched in sweat. He lowered his head and pleaded, "Please come in for a detailed discussion." After watching the group enter, he glared at Otakama anxiously and gestured for him to think of a solution quickly. He couldn't be bothered with his work as a concierge anymore. He turned around and followed them in a sorry state. "What's the matter? Isn't your new team leader here?" After offering incense in the morning hall, Bayuan looked around, and his expression quickly turned cold. "Is this his attitude towards the 5 big bosses? I'm very sorry. The team leader is on his way. Please bear with him." Yamashita could only bow again and beg sincerely. "Fujimoto, no. Huaichi Group will definitely give you an explanation regarding this matter. Please be magnanimous. Yamashi, is this the place for you to speak?" Bayuan raised his voice and rebuked angrily. How arrogant is Huaichi that he can't even meet people from his alliance? Or is it that he's still holding onto the hope that he can take over the foundation left behind by Fujimoto? Yamashita kept bowing, and sweat dripped onto the ground. To be honest, it was Mr. Fujimoto's last wish to have Huaichi inherit the team leader's position. "We've been asking to meet the 5 big bosses for days, but do you mean that this is the fault of the 5 big bosses?" Bayuan looked at him coldly. "I don't mean that. It's just that," Yamashita explained in a panic, but Bayuan waved his hand disinterestedly. "Enough. The Alliance has already decided to mediate the dispute between the Fujimoto group and the Tiger King group. Let's offer this in front of Fujimoto's memorial tablet." As he spoke, he took out a box from his pocket and threw it into Yamashita's arms. The box opened. Inside was actually a pinky finger that had already started to turn black with the end tied by a rubber band. Yamashita's hand trembled, and he looked up in disbelief. "What? What does this mean? This is the Tiger King group's sincerity. As the saying goes, it's better to squash enmity than keep it alive. Since Mrs. Fujimoto is willing to be magnanimous and forgive that child Yuzaka's unintentional mistake to resolve this grudge, the Alliance is also happy to see this happen. This is also an apology to the Fujimoto group. Yamashita held the box in his hand and looked at Baiyuan in shock, as well as Mrs. Fujimoto behind him, who was avoiding his gaze. His face turned green and red. His lips trembled, and he could no longer speak. What's wrong? Baiyuan asked coldly. Is the Fujimoto group unwilling to accept the verdict of the 5 big bosses? Or do you have other opinions? Yamashita gritted his teeth and didn't speak. He stood where he was and didn't move. His hands trembled as he held the box, unwilling to accept it. Once that pinky finger was placed in front of Fujimoto's memorial tablet, there would probably be no day for him to take revenge that even chopped off a finger. How terrible, how cruel. If they really want to offer condolences, even bringing a pig's head would be better than this. The young man under the umbrella outside the door sighed helplessly. The hem of his jacket was still dripping with rainwater. He stepped into the morning hall with 2 plastic bags in his hands. When he looked up and smiled, his smile was handsome and evil. The horns on his forehead curved, like the evil demon in the ukiyo-e painting. Thank you for your hard work, Yamashita. Help me hold this. He casually put the plastic bags in his hands into Yamashita's arms and sighed. Kyoto is so big, but it's really difficult to find a place to buy tributes. Help me set it up in the morning hall. As for the finger, forget about it. He tossed the box, ignoring Biyuan's ugly expression, and casually threw it out of the morning hall. Isn't it a little too shabby to set up a finger? Didn't the 5 big bosses send some virgin boys and girls over? Impudent person. Baiyuan was furious. His face was ashen, but when he noticed the respectful attitude of the people around him, he immediately understood the identity of the visitor. His eyes changed and quickly became gloomy. Are you going to reject the mediation of the 5 big bosses? Huaishir was stunned for a moment. Then he scratched his head in confusion. Why didn't you say so earlier? Yamashita, who was holding the plastic bags, suddenly exclaimed. His hands trembled, and 2 bloody round things fell out of the plastic bags. In the silence, 2 heads fell to the ground with low sounds. They rolled around mischievously, showing the last remnants of fear and despair on their faces. Under everyone's stunned gazes, the person who had arrived late casually took off his wet clothes, revealing his naked upper body, hideous tattoos, as well as crisscrossing wounds and bloodstains between the gunshot wounds, knife wounds, and burn wounds. The evil spirit carrying the bronze bell grinned, revealing a hideous smile at the mortal world from his back. Huaishir sighed and shrugged helplessly. After all, the Tiger King team is already gone. Chapter 714. 2 hours ago, Huaishir heard the sound of glass shattering outside the car window. Is it raining? He looked up and asked. Yes, but it's not heavy, Shangye, who was driving, replied. We'll be there in a while. Boss, you can sleep a little longer. I've slept enough. Do you have a cigarette? Yes, please have one. Shangye hurriedly stopped the car by the side of the road, ignoring the cars behind him honking furiously on the narrow one-way street. He turned around and took out his cigarette, offering it with both hands. Then, he respectfully lit it for Huaishir. I say, Shangye. Huaishir looked at him and couldn't help but ask, have you never doubted me? Shangye, who was in the driver's seat, turned around again. Boss, what did you say? I mean, you've worked hard for so many years, but you've been riding on your head by a brat like me. You even have to treat someone like this as your family. It must be uncomfortable, right? Huaishir asked calmly. Everyone else is obviously unhappy, but why haven't you objected at all? You're even so respectful. To be honest, I've already prepared to prove myself, but you didn't doubt me at all. If you want to say, Shangye, who was driving, rubbed his bald head and smiled embarrassedly. The scar on his face also curved into an arc. Maybe it's because I'm not good at thinking. Since I was young, My reaction has always been half a beat slower than others. I couldn't understand what the teachers taught me. My mother always thought that there was something wrong with me. Maybe there really is something wrong with me, but there's no cure for stupidity. Growing up, the only good thing about me is that I'm a little stronger, slow to react, and not too afraid of pain. So my mother always told me that it's okay to be a little stupid as long as I listen to what others say. As long as I listen to the right people, I can live better than those who use their brains. Shangye replied as he drove. If it weren't for Brother Fujimoto, I might have been sold to an illegal factory to work and beaten to death, right? Brother Fujimoto has never harmed me, and he's very righteous, promoting me to this extent. I think that the person Brother Fujimoto chose wouldn't harm me. Ahahaha, I accidentally said something stupid. Brother Huaisher, please don't take offense. As he spoke, he laughed to himself. Its sharp teeth were like those of a shark. How naive. Huaisher sighed. Haven't you thought about changing your profession? That won't do, Brother Huaiji. We don't even have a proper driver's license and household registration. Even if he worked at a convenience store, his hourly wage would be reduced to less than half of other people's once they saw that he was a mixed race. He wouldn't be able to survive. Someone as good-looking as you, Boss Huaiji, might be able to make a lot of money, but we can't. Ueno scratched his head and said the truth without knowing how to flatter. Only extreme Tao wouldn't despise us. You see, it's fine as long as we can fight. To tell you the truth, I'm super resistant to beatings. In the past, several people tried to stab me, but I beat them all up. Huaisher shook his head helplessly. He sighed and pinched the space between his eyebrows. Shangye, do you know what extreme Tao is in my opinion? Shangye was confused and wanted to turn around, but there was a crossroad in front of him, so he could only listen carefully. Then, he heard the calm voice of the paper effigy in his arms. All extreme Tao, the so-called chivalrous people, are actually like rats. Huaisher looked at the world outside the window that was submerged in the rain and sighed softly. It doesn't matter if you're forced by others, or if you're willing to fall into depravity. No matter what reason you have for choosing this way of life, it can only mean one thing. You can't survive in the outside world. But the world outside the sun isn't beautiful either. It's like the ocean, turbulent and bottomless. We can only lie on the small plank under our paws, unable to see the light. You can be chivalrous and indulge, or you can bully and fish as you please. But if you want to live a better life, you have to band together to survive. You have to contribute your small plank to form a big boat to keep the group warm. If there's a hole in the boat, it has to be repaired. If someone wants to be a black sheep, they have to stand up and get rid of him. If the boat sinks, all the rats are doomed. If other rats' boats block your way, you have to crush them. This has nothing to do with morality and justice. You don't have to think about it, but you have to know what you're doing. You should also know where you are. When the car stopped in front of the huge manor of the Tiger King team, Huaisher stood outside the car, lowered his head, and put out the cigarette in his hand. When he turned around and saw Shangye, who was still in a daze, he suddenly couldn't help but laugh. Now, we're going to crush the other boat, Shangye. He reached out and asked softly, "Do you want to come along?" Shangye was stunned. Was that moment just an illusion or an illusion? It was indescribable. A cold, damp breeze blew in from outside the window. It was like a raging storm, pouring into the car amidst the roar of the surging waves. The loud noise of the raging waves almost crushed him. But amidst the roar, a solemn and majestic silhouette emerged from the storm, tearing the hurricane apart and crashing through the waves. It was an unbelievably huge steel battleship patrolling between the sky and the sea. It was insufferably arrogant, standing proudly at the top of this tyrannical world. It was summoning him. Should he come? Was there a need to hesitate? Shangye gave up thinking. He just instinctively raised his hand and held that palm tightly. He pleaded from the bottom of his heart, "Please take me with you. Please let me come with you." "Sure." Amidst the drifting rain, the man smiled. "Then follow me." Just like that, with Shangye in tow, the two of them walked towards the incoming behemoth. In the splashing rain, unexpectedly, Shangye didn't feel any uneasiness or fear. He felt extremely at ease, as if nothing was worth fearing anymore. Ignoring the rain falling into his eyes, he widened his eyes and stared at the back of that person. He witnessed him moving forward. He watched as he raised his fist and destroyed the insignificant iron gate. Then, he stepped into the manor. Then, with a punch, he sent the person who rushed forward flying like a doll. With another punch, he caused another person to repeat the same mistake. More and more people rushed forward, and then more and more people were sent flying. Amidst the crisp sounds of bones breaking, the rain also trembled in horror. Everything that was insignificant was being brutally ravaged and crushed. If it was an enemy in front of him, he would crush them. If it was a wall in front of him, he would tear the wall apart. He walked straight forward, step by step. Amidst the wails, he walked deeper into the encirclement. Even bullets and gunpowder couldn't stop him. Some people were screaming monster. Some wanted to kneel down and beg for mercy. Some people fled in all directions, and some rushed towards him. When Shanya came back to his senses, he had already fallen in the messy hall. He tried his best to breathe. His body was covered with gunshot wounds, knife wounds, and bruises from the scuffle. But his body seemed to have a mind of its own. He contracted his arms tightly until the struggling opponent in his arms lost his strength and stopped moving. He won. In his exhaustion, he felt his vision darken. He lost too much blood and couldn't breathe. But when he looked up, he could still see the man standing beside him, looking down at him, waiting quietly. "Can you still stand up, Shanya?" he said, "just a little more. Don't give up. You were waiting for me." Shanya raised his head in disbelief and looked at the cold face that was dyed red with blood. So that person laughed and nodded matter-of-factly. "Yes, because we agreed to do it together." How should he describe the ecstasy and honor at that moment? The happiness that almost made him cry, and the power that came with those words. Unprecedented power. "Sorry to have kept you waiting." Shanya raised his head and propped his body up. He forgot about his illness and weakness and followed that person again. Just like that, he broke through the last door and finally saw those pale faces. They no longer looked as arrogant as before. They seemed to be trembling in fear. You can't do this." The 5 bosses have already stopped. Arasaka Tetsuya covered the wound on his left hand and screamed, "Beiyuan, Mr. Beiyuan won't let you go." After a moment of silence, Shanya and the man beside him looked at each other and smiled mockingly at the same time. Then they raised the gun in their hands, aimed at the front, and pulled the trigger. When the roaring stopped, Shanya slowly walked forward and looked down at those faces that were still in disbelief even when they were about to die. He grinned and spat. "Beiyuan? He's nothing. We actually respect you a lot too, Mr. Beiyuan." At this moment, in the morning hall, the paper figurine in his arms shrugged helplessly. "But we really didn't know. To be honest, I didn't expect them to be so weak." Beiyuan's face was pale. He was about to scold him when he saw Huaishir raise his hand and push it forward casually. Boom! Along with a low, muffled sound, a hurricane appeared out of nowhere. Suffocating airwaves swept across and scraped past his face like a knife. His hat was blown away, and his mottled white hair danced in the wind. He lay on his scalp and didn't dare to move anymore. "There's not even a guy who can catch my push. The Tiger King team is really not that good." Huaishir smiled and explained to the emissary of the 5 big bosses. "Besides, this isn't our fault, right?" Beiyuan's face twitched. What do you mean?" "What I mean is what I mean." Huaishir sighed. "We're all small characters who can only continue to exist because of the Alliance. If this is what the 5 big bosses want, how can we dare to disobey?" "But why didn't you say something so important earlier?" he asked doubtfully. "Shouldn't the 5 big bosses' judgment be delivered soon? It's already past 5 in the afternoon. Even if they came after work, they didn't have to come so early, right? Mr. Beiyuan, why didn't you come an hour earlier or give them a call?" As he spoke, the bloodstained man took a step forward and scrutinized that angry face. He asked word by word, "Or is it because of you that you were delayed on the road for too long? How dare you?" Beiyuan roared and retorted hoarsely, "Are you going to say that this is my fault? What else?" Huaishir retorted indifferently. He raised his finger and poked the old man's chest. He told him word by word, "The destruction of the Tiger King team. the death of more than 70 people, including Tetsuya Sakaka and his son, and all the losses caused. All of these, of course, are your fault. Chapter 7:15. Dead silence. A frozen dead silence. Even the big shots who were quietly peeping in the side room were stunned, staring at the insolent figure. For the first time in a long time, they saw someone who dared to step on Bei Yuan's face. Only Bei Yuan looked down at the finger in front of his chest in a daze. It was still unbelievable. When he looked up, he saw Huai Shi's mocking and indifferent eyes. His face turned from red to blue, and the cane between his 5 fingers almost cracked. He roared angrily. "Bastard, you dare to insult me. I just said a few words of truth. You don't have to be so angry, right?" Huai Shi sighed. "You don't have to speak so loudly. I can hear you." He paused for a moment, and his eyes became dangerous. He calmly patted the man in front of him on the shoulder, tidied up his collar and hair, and gently told him, "No matter how rude you are, you shouldn't be so rude in front of the coffin of the deceased. Calm down, okay?" Huai Shi patted the holster under his ribs through the dress. He slowly let go of his hand and took a step back. He looked at his appearance and nodded with satisfaction. "That's right. You are the messenger of the 5 big shots. You shouldn't lower yourself to the level of small people like us. You should at least show a dignified appearance. You think you've won?" Bei Yuan squeezed out a hoarse voice from between his teeth. His old face was gloomy, and he stared at his face. "You think you are very powerful, very strong. I know that every year there will be people like you who don't know the immensity of heaven and earth jumping out, wanting to challenge authority. You don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. You think you can challenge the 5 big shots with Tangbin's inheritance in your hands. But you are dreaming, Huai Shi. If the 5 big shots don't allow it, you can't even be the boss. Probably. Maybe it's just like what you said." Huai Shi shrugged indifferently and smiled. "What? Who do you think you are? If you want to take away my position, let the 5 big shots talk to me. Luo He, Sheng Tianmu, Jiuwa, Qinya, and Huang Chuan. It doesn't matter who it is." He bent down and whispered into Bei Yuan's ear, "If they're not satisfied with me as a newcomer, then ask them to come and tell me personally." In the silence, Bei Yuan raised his eyes and looked at the man's face. Very quickly, he nodded slowly. "Very good. I will pass on your words. Huai Ji, I really hope that you can still have this kind of backbone when you're about to die." He withdrew his venomous gaze and didn't say anything else. He turned around and left. But after taking a few steps, he heard a voice behind him. "All right, aren't you here to offer your condolences?" Huai Shi, who was in front of the memorial tablet, turned around and asked in confusion, "Why don't you burn incense?" Bei Yuan's footsteps paused. His expression twitched as he restrained his anger. He turned around and raised his hand towards the foot of the mountain. At the foot of the mountain, he bent down and offered a bunch of incense sticks with both hands. The incense sticks were lit in the candlelight. The fleeting flame rose and illuminated the faces of the old and the young. Very quickly, it disappeared in the water vapor that blew in from the thin rain. Only a thread of flickering flame fell into the incense burner and turned into spirals of green smoke, diffusing in all directions. Watching Bei Yuan leave angrily at the foot of the mountain, his face pale, walked over and lowered his voice. "Bei Yuan is the messenger of the 5 big bosses, if I know." Huai Shi said, "I did it on purpose." At the foot of the mountain was sluggish. Why? The reason is very simple. Huai Shi turned around and looked at him calmly. If there is no chance, how can a newcomer stand out? At the foot of the mountain, he wanted to say something, but stopped. He really wanted to say that he was roasting the Fujimoto group on the fire. Once this spread out, he was afraid that they would be in danger of being overturned. But the Fujimoto group no longer existed. Now it should be the Huai Ji group. The matter of the relationship had already been decided. What right did he, a has-been, have to make irresponsible remarks? What was done could not be undone. What was left was nothing more than a mountain of knives and a sea of fire. After the panic at the foot of the mountain, he had already accepted the reality. If the 5 big bosses were to blame him, At worst, he would accompany the group leader on the road to hell. He lowered his eyes and did not speak anymore. The consequences of offending Bei Yuan did not need to wait until tomorrow. It had already appeared at this moment. The big bosses who had participated in the farewell in the side room had already begun to make various excuses and bid farewell. They admired Yu Huaishi's courage to chase away the messenger of the 5 big bosses, but it did not mean that they liked to associate with a guy who did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. "Oh, Mr. Huaishi is young and promising. I should have stayed to drink a few more cups of wine. Unfortunately, there was an emergency at home, and I could not stay for long. What a pity." The old man of the Yamada Gumi pretended to be regretful. He held Huaishi's hand and reluctantly said goodbye. Huaishi did not insist. He did not even ask Fujimoto's widow and child to stay. He just smiled and said goodbye one by one. "You're not leaving after dinner? What a pity." He politely sent them out of the door. "Have a safe journey, everyone. I will not send you off." After watching the old men turn around, Huaishi looked at the house and asked, seemingly puzzled, "How strange. Is everyone actually not interested in the Tiger King Group's inheritance?" Under the umbrella, the old man of the Yamada Gumi paused in his footsteps. However, he did not look back and left with a normal expression. 5 minutes later, there was a knock on the back door. The old man who had left and returned smiled at the foot of the mountain. "Oh, I forgot to bring an umbrella. Can you do me a favor and let this old man disturb you for dinner?" "Of course, please come in." The foot of the mountain gestured and pointed to the side room next to the morning hall. In the side room, which was bustling with activity again, many pairs of eyes looked over and immediately became unhappy. "Hey, old turtle, didn't you leave? Why are you back? My nephew and Fujimoto were sworn brothers in prison. Why can't we have a drink at his funeral? But you, bald Kappa, didn't you say that your daughter is about to give birth? Hurry up and go back. I only have 2 sons, and they are both eating in prison. Where did this daughter come from?" "You must have heard wrongly, old turtle." In less than 10 minutes, more than 1/3 of the people actually ran back. It was like the second and third meetings between the employees of a club. After deceiving the irrelevant and insensible fellows away, they reunited in a familiar place again. Indeed, the Huai Paper Group did not know what was good for them and might be in danger. However, this did not affect how tempting the Tiger King Group's inheritance was. If they did not take action now and waited for the higher-ups of the alliance to distribute it, who knew how much effort they would have to put in to get their hands on it? How could it compare to the pleasure of taking advantage of the situation now? Even if the Huai Paper Group was no longer around, they couldn't just ask them to return the assets that they had spent money on, even if they were the 5 big bosses, right? Although the extreme Dao did not follow the so-called procedures and never paid taxes, there were also rules. There is too much room for manipulation and too much profit to be made. These old fogies couldn't help but be tempted. Besides, they might even be able to take another wave of the Huai Paper Group. Wouldn't it be wonderful to have the assets of 2 groups serving them? Looking at the lively atmosphere in the room from afar, Huaishi turned and left. He threw the rest of the matters to Oshia. There was no need for him to appear again. An hour later, Oshia hurried into the lounge, specially prepared for Huaishi. He was sweating profusely and wiping his forehead. "Team leader, the assets of the Tiger King Group have been sold. The fixed assets and goods in their hands, as well as the channels and shops of the milk tea chain, have all been bought by those 4 groups." At this point, he couldn't help but feel the pinch. It was still too rushed. Those old fogies had opened their mouths wide and had no room to bargain at all when they haggled. It was as if they were buying cabbages. Moreover, according to the rules, such assets that had not been dealt with properly had to be discounted by 30%. It was almost the same as daylight robbery. He lowered his head and handed over the thick documents in his hands. He reported, this time, it was respectively from the Yamada Gumi, and Huaishi waved and interrupted the long-winded speech that followed. "Just tell me the total amount." "A total of $57 million US. Oshia adjusted his glasses and took a few breaths to prevent himself from having a heart attack. "According to your request, we only want cash and hard currency. If it's not enough, we'll mortgage it first and settle it within a week. After hastily calculating the borrowed income, he couldn't help but be overjoyed. In this case, no, Why Paper Group's accounts now have a large sum of money. What do they need so much money for? Huaisher waved his hand indifferently. How much money do we have in the accounts now? Including the surplus and working capital from the last quarter, the bulk of it is the advance payment that has just been transferred. There's a total of about $9 million US. That's quite a lot. Huaisher nodded in understanding. He stared at the gradually rising twilight sky outside and said thoughtfully, Oshia, how many people do you think there are in the entire Donbua inner circle? Huh? Oshia was puzzled. After thinking for a long time, he said hesitantly, about 200,000 people? Anyway, the annual census doesn't count the people here, and no one has counted it before. Then let's make it 250,000. Huaisher lowered his head and stared at the flickering cigarette at his fingertips. He thought for a moment and shrugged. Then, let's do it this way. Before Oshia could react, he raised his head and smiled. Go tell everyone here that there's a guy called Why Paper who's new here. He wants to treat them to a drink and ask them to take care of him in the future. He said, I want to treat everyone to a drink. Oshia was stunned. He froze on the spot and was dumbfounded. Boss, are you serious? Such a large sum of money is not something to joke about, right? Huaisher said, help me do the math. Do you have a calculator? This was the simplest arithmetic problem. The cheapest beer, Twilight beer, cost $270 per can. That was a total of $67 million, which was almost 700,000 American dollars. In this case, I can still keep more than 8 million. Huaisher pinched his chin and thought for a moment. He took out a business card from his pocket. Border Peace Water Conservancy Group. Contact this company. I've already negotiated the terms of the contract. Just discuss the prepayment and follow-up payment. Remember to reserve a part of the cost of the pipeline laying and renovation. After that, you can tell those drinkers that from next week onwards, everyone will be able to buy water from us. Clean, clear, drinkable water. He said, but water is different from wine. Wine is free, but water is 3 times the market price. In the silence, Oshia's hands trembled as he held the paper. He almost suspected that he had heard wrong, but it was difficult to doubt his words. After a long time, he panted and finally calmed down. Taking off his glasses with trembling hands, the white-haired man bent forward and bowed 90 degrees. Yes, sir. 2 minutes later, the first order from the leader of Huaisher's group reached everyone's ears. It was not a fight, nor was it a reprimand or praise. It was just a simple order. He wanted to treat everyone to a drink. Most people thought that he was crazy. Some people were already quietly preparing to leave and find their next job before the big wave. But more people chose to stay, because there was too little time, because they were still observing, and because the red packet given by their big brother was too tempting. Of course, there were also uneasy members who quietly found Shangye, who was the closest to the bottom, and asked with concern, Brother Shangye, I heard that the boss offended the 5 big bosses. Is that true? I'm afraid that everyone will have a hard time in the future. Brother Huaisher is a real man. What do you know? Shangye, who was wrapped in bandages, smoked a cigarette as if he was looking at a group of idiots. He squinted and said, Didn't you get the bonus? Do your job well. Not enough cars. Then go and borrow. Doesn't Yamada Society have a freight company? If you don't have enough manpower, then call those useless people in your family who only know how to take drugs over. It's fine as long as they have hands and feet. Don't tell me that the boss doesn't pay. No matter what, tonight, under this absurd order, the new Huaisher group began to operate. He had mobilized more than twice the manpower and countless external helpers. He had spent a lot of money. Then, he had used more than 70% of the budget to empty almost all the convenience stores and warehouses in Kyoto. He had called all the suppliers and even drove the trucks to Nara and Osaka. At 10 o'clock in the evening, it seemed that all the beer in the world had come to the inner circle of Donbua. Then, under the confused gazes of the onlookers, the members of Huaisher group moved box after box to the side of the street, piling up into mountains at hundreds of intersections. When the bell rang in the distance, men with tattoos and ill-fitting suits jumped out of the car. They opened the packages neatly and politely greeted the people around them. They delivered every can of beer to anyone who passed by. Free. Just like that, they tirelessly told everyone that this was not a promotional advertisement, nor was it any despicable scam. It was just that a Mr. Huaisher wanted to treat you to a drink. You didn't need to know who Huaisher was, nor did you need to understand what he was doing here. Whether you chose to accept or refuse, he just wanted to make you happy. Even if it was only for a moment, even if the happiness was only a little. It was that simple. He just wanted you to live well. Some people refused and quickly walked away, watching vigilantly. However, there were even more people who chose to accept the heavy beer because they didn't care about it. Then, after carefully observing the production date and label, they pulled the tab and tasted it. Some people praised it, while others just casually took a few sips and threw it into the dustbin. Whether it was curiosity, suspicion, or resistance, more and more people gathered. The atmosphere gradually heated up, and the cheers spread in all directions. In the end, in this narrow and dirty inner circle of Donbua, it gathered into a thin and rippling sea. After many years, some people could still recall the cheers and laughter on the street that night. Everyone raised the beer in their hands and drank heartily. The people hiding in the alleys, under the bridges, and in the corners came to the street again and took a can of beer from those people without distinction. Whether it was hooligans, gangsters, ordinary people, mixed-race people, helpers, or dancers, under the illumination of the neon lights, everyone had a hallucinatory smile on their faces. The distant sound of a harmonica came in the wind, and everything was drowned in the sweet smell of wheat. It seemed that the world was no longer hazy. Chapter 716. When the hustle and bustle ended, the rain had stopped. The streets returned to silence in the middle of the night. Only the scattered cans on the ground proved the existence of the cocktail party just now. The smell of alcohol in the air gradually dissipated in the damp wind. Only the people in Huayi's group were still finishing up. They distributed the remaining beer and drank heartily. The rain has stopped. Huaisher sighed softly. He turned around and looked at Shangye, who walked in. Did it go well? How can it not go well when it's free of charge? Shangye held the beer can in his hand. He didn't care about the bandages on his body. He raised his head and gulped down the beer. He wiped his mouth in satisfaction. I really learned something. I haven't seen the people here so happy in so many years. It's like a carnival. Huaisher asked, do they look happy? Shangye was stunned for a long time. He nodded subconsciously. Of course, they are happy, right? Huaisher chuckled softly. In the silence, he picked up the beer in his hand and raised his glass to the man in the morning hall. He toasted from afar. Cheers! The first step had been taken. Leave the rest to me. In the quiet courtyard of Yingzhou, the sound of water gurgling could be heard. Jinglu's bamboo tube was filled with water. It hit the stone and echoed in a low voice. Under the moonlight, the bamboo leaves danced. The old man, standing in front of the pond, sprinkled fish food. The koi fish in the pond surged and competed for the food. The scene of bright red and white was really pleasing to the eye. The agile Shiba Inu lay by the pond and stretched out its claws curiously. Instead, it was splashed by the swaying fishtail. Just like that, the old man quietly listened to the report behind him. It sounds like an unruly mad dog. After a long time, Kosuke nodded slowly. He sprinkled the last of the fish food in his hand and lowered his head to rub the ears of the Shiba Inu. He said worriedly, Our Tai Lang can't be like that. The Shiba Inu named Tai Lang looked up blankly. He grinned and wagged his tail at the old man. Okay, go play in the yard. Don't bully the fish anymore. The old man rubbed the Shiba Inu's face and drove it away from the fish pond. As he watched it run away, his expression gradually became serious. Huaijiren actually dares to offend the dignity of the alliance. This is truly unforgivable. He turned around and looked indifferently at the man kneeling on the ground behind him. But there is one thing that he was right about, Lord Beiyuan. This is indeed your fault, isn't it? Bei Yuan was on the ground, shivering. It was because of your delay and carelessness that the Tiger King group was destroyed. Shenmu said, Actually, I can't be bothered to care about the life and death of the two guys from the Yuban family. They violated the law and were contaminated with forbidden drugs. Even without the Huaimai group, someone would use other excuses to get rid of them sooner or later. But there is no doubt about one thing. Bei Yuan Kun, because of you, the prestige of the five elders has been damaged. That's the biggest mistake you've ever made. This one. Bei Yuan's face was pale as he swallowed his saliva. He wanted to explain, but under the gaze of the heaven's eye, he could not say anything. Eventually, he closed his eyes in despair. This one is willing to accept punishment, whether you are willing or not. Punishment will come. Because you have violated the rules, Bei Yuan Kun, even I will not be lenient. The old man lowered his head and looked at his subordinate on the ground. He looked at the missing little finger on his right hand and suddenly said, 8 fingers shouldn't affect your retirement life, right? Bei Yuan was stunned and in disbelief. But soon after, he kowtowed frantically on the ground. Thank you. Thank you for your magnanimity. This one will definitely. He expressed his gratitude with tears of gratitude and was already incoherent. All right, you may leave. Sheng Tianmu retracted his gaze and casually waved his hand. In the empty courtyard, a respectful attendant walked over from afar with a tray and presented the things that had just been delivered to the old man. A can of beer, the cheapest Twilight on the market, seemed to have just been removed from its plastic packaging. There were scratches on it, and even the packaging was not considered excellent. Even this old man has a jar. Sheng Tianmu was stunned and then laughed softly. That's great. I didn't expect to have beer to drink tonight. He casually picked up the can and opened it. He was not afraid of the poison inside. After taking a big gulp, he smacked his lips. You can't even bear to give me an ice cube. The taste is just so. He paused and looked into the distance. In the shadow of the bamboo forest, he raised his voice and asked, Hey guest, do you want to join us? Under the shadow of the bamboo forest, a sloppy middle-aged man walked out. His messy blonde hair was casually thrown behind his head. It was a little curly. He wore an ill-fitting windbreaker and had a stubble on his beard. He looked like a tramp that could be seen everywhere in America. But in his hand was a can of beer of the same style. He waved it at Sheng Tianmu. I have it. Young people these days are really generous. Sheng Tianmu laughed softly and took another sip. He raised his hand and poured the beer into the pond. He said to the fish that were fighting for food, Since everyone has a share, you all should have some too. Have a taste of the pride and courage of young people. A can of beer quickly disappeared without a trace in the fish's mouths. Only the empty can was thrown back onto the plate and left silently with the attendant. Under the moonlight, Sheng Tianmu waved his hand and asked casually, Lawrence, can you tell me what Green Sun thinks about this matter? Lawrence replied in a deep voice, Fujimoto is one of our members. Sheng Tianmu corrected, Once? There's no difference. One day as Green Sun, forever as Green Sunday, Lawrence said. What Kaishiki did was just blood for blood. We can't let him understand when revenge breeds revenge, then put down the knife in front of the enemy and happily play golf together, right? The tramp representing Green Sun said, This is not against the rules. Wrong. Sheng Tianmu shook his head and looked back at the tramp. He told him word by word, That's not right, Mr. Lawrence. The rules are set by us. Of course, they should serve us. The old man of the five said, Although I don't have any opinion, the kid from the Huanchuan family is hopping mad. Moreover, this kind of thing that shakes the authority of the five can't be left alone. It must be dealt with quickly and severely. Lawrence shrugged indifferently and drank his beer. He asked casually, If that's the case, then why did you drink his beer? It's because I drank that we can talk now. Sheng Tianmu snorted. Young people these days have become so powerful that it's scary. They don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. It's enviable and scary. How is this a mad dog? It's clearly a wild wolf that wants to mark its territory and announce it to the world. However, courage alone is not enough. Are there not enough people with courage? Shengtiemu looked back and shrugged sympathetically. But so many years have passed. The 5 of them are still the 5 of them. However, the Huaiqi group might not last until tomorrow. I hope that the 5 of them can handle this matter properly. Lawrence said, Green Sun thinks highly of him. To be exact, the Grand Commander thinks highly of him. This time, Shengtiemu was silent. He was stunned as if he had heard something unbelievable. Even someone as arrogant as the Grand Commander knows how to take care of the younger generation? Yes, because he's worth it. In the silence, Shengtiemu rubbed his forehead and sighed as he waved his hand. All right, then he still has a choice. Is he to be punished by the 5 of them, or cut off one of his hands to apologize to the Alliance? Do you think that kind of arrogant young man will agree? Lawrence asked. Then why do you think I care? Shengtiemu asked coldly. He insulted the Northern Plains, insulted the envoy of the Alliance. He offended me. Lawrence, if not for this glass of wine, why would I even look at him? I've been waiting here for you for so long. For the sake of Green Sun, I can pretend that nothing happened and help you convince Huang Chuan not to pursue the matter. However, the Alliance will not recognize the Huaiqi group. If Huaiqi does not understand the value of the Alliance, then the Anesthetic Pursuit Alliance will no longer be his friends. Shengtiemu said, At that time, no one will need to do anything. The 6 Direction Society and the K Society will eat them up until there's nothing left. Lawrence was unmoved. He just lowered his head and drank his beer quietly. After so many years of dealing with him, how could he not know what kind of style this old ghost was? Rather than calling him an extreme, it was better to call him a businessman. He was so calculating that it was frightening. He would not do any business that would cause him to lose money. After saying so much, you still haven't gotten to the point. Lawrence finished his beer and looked up to ask, What about the but at the end? Tell me the but. Under his gaze, Sheng Tianmu suddenly laughed softly and spread out his hands. That's right. Just like what you said, there are always buts. Not everyone has the qualifications to possess it. He must prove that he is worthy. As he spoke, he took out an envelope and threw it over. Lawrence raised his hand, and the envelope landed in front of him. It floated in the air and opened by itself, revealing 2 pieces of information and a dignified middle-aged man's photo. He wore a white robe and held a bright staff in his hand. He looked indescribably holy. Lawrence narrowed his eyes and recognized the face. The Illumination Society? Yes, Shengtiemu said. Recently, there have been abnormal changes in the upper echelons of the Illumination Society. After the change of the officiant, their style suddenly became radical, and they began to secretly infiltrate the inner circle of Danbo. It is said that many idiots have become their believers. Even a madam of the Chiba family has been dragged into it. The struggle between the second branch and the first branch is really ugly. When the altar was discovered in the room, Chiba's face turned green. Ha ha! Shengtiemu laughed gloatingly, happy to see his ally in trouble. However, Lawrence didn't laugh along with him. He just waited quietly for him to finish. Although it's fun to watch a joke, the Alliance must take an equal revenge. Shengtiemu said casually, Since you think so highly of Huaiqi, ask him to use his instinct as an extreme Dao and add some trouble for the other party. Of course, he will bear the consequences. The Alliance will never admit it. After he finished speaking, he smiled. If he can save Chiba's face and prove his strength and importance, not only will the Alliance not pursue the matter, he might even owe you a favor. Lawrence put away the envelope. He didn't refuse, but he couldn't be bothered to give him any face. It should be a favor owed to you, right? I don't deny it. Shengtiemu spread his hands. In the night wind that was gradually turning cold, he suddenly said, Have you heard? It is said that the higher-ups are going to issue a peace order. Lawrence was silent for a moment and slowly nodded. The situation was overwhelmingly unfavorable for the Alliance today. The so-called peace order was one of the traditions passed down from the famous imperial edict in the history of Yingzhou. In fact, there were only 4 words in total. The world was at peace. But in fact, it had nothing to do with peace. It was to let the people on the ground use their weapons. During the 7-day period of the order, all disputes and contradictions that couldn't be put on the table could be solved secretly. As long as it didn't affect the stability of the society, no matter how many people died, no matter how bad the damage was, the authorities wouldn't pursue the matter. It's just like issuing a business license for a dogfighting ring, right? It involves the consumption tax policy of the entire country, and it actually depends on the victory and defeat of a group of Yakuza. Even if I'm this old, sometimes I feel that the world is too ridiculous and ridiculous. But no matter what, we have no choice. Shang Dianmu counted on his fingers and said, "It is said that the K gang and the Foolish Company have been very close recently. There should be a big move. But the 6E gang and the Great Circle have started to shrink. I'm afraid they don't plan to get involved. As for the Iron King gang, that group of lackeys has been eyeing the inner circle of Donbua for too long. The higher-ups have all placed heavy bets, but no one cares about us, Lawrence." Shang Dianmu said decisively, "Once the joint war in the capital starts, I'm afraid we will be the first to bear the brunt and be besieged. At this time, the alliance is still scattered. The 5 big bosses are doing their own things, and there are even people preparing for a riot. No matter how you think about it, there won't be any bright future. Time is limited. We have to gather everyone again. Of course, it would be best if it could be under my leadership." Shang Dianmu patted his empty hands and sighed softly. "The so-called favor is just an excuse. I want to find a chance to have a good talk with the Chiba family. If the alliance can be gathered because of this, I am willing to acknowledge the contribution of the Huai-Chi group." Speaking of this, the old man grinned and revealed a smile. If he is not satisfied with this, not to mention anything else, as long as he can establish enough merit, this old man can even marry that ugly girl in the family to him. Lawrence was stunned and raised his eyes. Li Hua is back. At this juncture? Yes, she won't listen to anything. Shang Dianmu revealed a trace of a self-satisfied smile. Don't look at her young age. She's a brave girl who is not inferior to her mother. Do you want to see her later? No need. There are too many things to do. Lawrence withdrew his gaze and took out his felt hat from his bosom. He looked at Shang Dianmu one last time. Also, don't think that I don't know how much of what I said just now was just to scare you. You old ghost. Even at this time, you are still thirsting for more power. Shang Dianmu asked in return. Is this not good, my friend? No, this cannot be better. Lawrence turned and disappeared into the darkness. In the silence, Shang Dianmu quietly stared at the calm pond in front of him. After a long time, he turned and left. In the middle of the night, Huaisher woke up from his dream and opened his eyes. He saw the figure who had appeared at some point in time in the corner of his new bedroom. He slowly propped himself up and looked over. Who is it? Lawrence, the person you contacted on the phone. The homeless man who was smoking took off his hat and sighed softly. If you ask me, your recent matters have been a little big and a little troublesome. Are you talking about the Tiger King team? Lawrence shook his head. I'm talking about the water supply company. It will only incur the disgust of the officials. Huaisher was amused. Is there a need to care about those people who are unhappy just because those lowly bastards have clean water to drink? Lawrence didn't answer. He just put the envelope on the table in front of him. The 5 big bosses have made their decision. Is it to cut off their hands or be expelled? Huaisher asked. Lawrence looked at him unexpectedly and shook his head. The Huaisher group needs to complete a mission to avoid punishment. Do dirty work? It sounds more troublesome than cutting off their hands. Huaisher looked at the information and photos in the opened envelope. Kill them? Or what? You can do whatever you want, but the Alliance won't bear any consequences for you. To put it simply, if you do this, you will offend the Illumination Church. At that time, hundreds of thousands of believers in Ingzhou will try to make you a thorn in their side. The Illumination Church, a new religion that spread throughout Southeast Asia. It was expanding like a fish in water in countries like Ingzhou and Xinluo where religion was legal. There was no lack of people in high positions among the believers. Unlike something like extreme Tao that couldn't be seen in the light, its power and status in the capital were shocking on the surface, not to mention the many people who had been promoted internally. If they didn't handle it well, The Huaishur group would be crushed to pieces. That's it? Huaishur smiled confidently and put away the envelope. I got it. Leave it to me. Lawrence was also stunned. Don't you need help? If there's a need, I'll mention it. Huaishur smiled and watched Lawrence disappear into the darkness. After a long time, he looked around. After confirming that there was no one around, his face fell. After thinking for a while and analyzing carefully, he felt that if he didn't handle this well, not to mention developing and strengthening, he was afraid that he would die on the spot. Right now, there was only one way left. He closed his eyes, put his hands together, and prayed sincerely. Ella, a dream. Save me. On the other end of the communication, AI Ching, who had stayed up late and worked overtime to clean up someone's mess, didn't sleep for more than 30 hours. She picked up a cup of water expressionlessly and drank the stomach medicine. Then, she coldly rolled her eyes. There's no hope. Just wait for death. Goodbye. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.